Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Unify the ninja world. Start with Awakening Mangekyo. Chapter 21. Uchiha Zan seemed to sense something and glanced back at Tsunade. He just sensed that Tsunade seemed to have some bad feelings towards him. But this feeling soon disappeared, and Uchiha Zan didn't pay much attention to it. He had his own idea in mind, that is, to use this ninja team to establish his prestige. Because his age was too misleading, the ninjas of Konoha seemed to have misjudged his strength. Although it was not true or false that he relied on Tsunade to eat soft rice, Uchiha Zan was unhappy that he looked down on him. Action. Without organizing too much manpower, Uchiha Zan rushed forward at the command. It was just a 5-man team led by an elite jonin, and he just wanted to try whether his skills had become rusty in the past 2 years. Seeing Uchiha Zan act so recklessly, Tsunade was very anxious. Although she is the leading jonin of Uchiha Zan, her knowledge of her apprentice is only that he is very talented, gifted, and a giant dragon. Tsunade has no positive understanding of Uchiha Zan's strength. The only thing is that Uchiha Makoto is as calm as ever, and she doesn't know how strong Uchiha Zan is. But as a wife, she can't question her husband's decision. Everyone, surround the escape directions first. Uchiha Makoto showed her 3 Tomo Sharingan and spoke to the Konoha shinobi next to her in a calm tone. Glimpse of the blood-red Sharingan, the hearts of the ninjas trembled, and naturally they dared not have any objections. Chidori Shuriken. As Uchiha Zan rushed over, he took out 3 shuriken and threw them instantly. In an instant, the shuriken infused with lightning-style chakra attacked the Sand Shinobi team below like 3 lightning bolts. Enemy attack. Elite Jonin Kazemaru, sensing the chakra fluctuation, skillfully drew out his kunai to block the incoming shuriken. Swish. The moment he deflected the shuriken, a strong electric current erupted on the spot. Several Sand Shinobi, including Kazemaru, were affected by the erupting electric current. This caused the elite Chunin behind Kazemaru to be paralyzed for a short time. The flying Chidori Shuriken showed no mercy. Swish. The throats of the 2 Sand Shinobi were instantly pierced by the shuriken, and they fell backwards, holding their throats in pain. Seeing their companions rushing on the road 1 second ago and dying in front of them the next second, the fellow Sand Shinobi were extremely frightened. Puppet Technique Tiger. Puppet Technique Sand Lizard. Puppet Technique Flying Bird. The 3 Sand Shinobi summoned a puppet each. In an instant, the Sand Shinobi team was in a crushing situation in terms of numbers alone. When Uchiha Zan saw these puppets, he just wanted to laugh. The magnet style he possessed was a complete dimensionality reduction attack on these puppets. But despite this, Uchiha Zan was not going to use the magnet style. Because for him now, it was completely unnecessary to be so troublesome. Swish. Uchiha Zan drew out the samurai sword behind him, and the silver-white blade emitted bursts of sharp cold light. The Sand Shinobi, who had not yet realized that something was wrong, immediately controlled the puppet to kill Uchiha Zan. Puppet Technique Toxic Claws. Puppet Technique 1000 Poison Stings. Puppet Technique Explosive Feathers. The puppet tiger ejected the poisonous claws between its claws and attacked him from the front. The wandering puppet Sand Lizard shot out a high density of poisonous 1000 stings from its mouth, attacking Uchiha Zan's vital points. The puppet birds flying in the air also shot out dense explosive feathers to cover the killing moves of the other 2 puppets. Seeing Uchiha Zan being surrounded, Tsunade and Makoto couldn't help but sweat in their palms. The 2 Konoha shinobi felt a little gloating, feeling that this reckless boy still couldn't understand the cruelty of the battle and actually rushed up like this. When they believed that Uchiha Zan was dead, the samurai sword in Uchiha Zan's hand flashed with lightning. Chidori Blade. Uchiha Zan faced the continuous killing moves, and there was no fear on his face. 3 Tomo Sharingan appeared in his eyes, and everything seemed to slow down a few beats at this moment. Zzzzz. The sound of electric current bursting came from the blade in Uchiha Zan's hand in an instant. The ferocious puppet tiger came first, and Uchiha Zan only raised his blade, and a flash of lightning appeared. With a swish sound of electric current exploding, the puppet tiger's claws were cut off. Dozens of Senbon came one after another, and Uchiha Zan turned around and shook the blade in an orderly manner. Bang, bang, bang. Every Senbon was hit by the blade and flew back on the spot to penetrate the sand lizard's body. And facing the exploding feathers falling from the sky, Uchiha Zan didn't even raise his head. Lightning style, Chidori style, he groaned, and in an instant, a blue arc of electricity burst out from his body. The noisy and dazzling lightning accurately hit each exploding feather, shattering it into pieces of charred fragments. The puppet flying bird flying in the air, even if it was dozens of meters high, could not escape the fate of being hit by the electric current. The moment the electric current hit, the chakra line on the bird was burned off. The three puppets turned into a pile of useless pieces in just 2 breaths. Big enemy. Feng Wan, who knew the terrifying enemy in front of him, did not dare to be negligent and immediately launched a killing move. Wind-style wind blade. The chakra that came out from his fingertips was like a sharp knife, and with a slight flick, it turned into a breeze and attacked Uchiha Zan. Wind-style. It's still too slow. This ninjutsu that turns wind into a blade attack is difficult for ordinary ninjas, even Jonin, to avoid. But in Uchiha Zan's eyes, the wind blade flying in the air was surprisingly slow. And with just one glance, Uchiha Zan memorized this A-level wind-style ninjutsu. If he wanted to, he could use it at any time. But now, there was no need for it. Uchiha Zan raised the samurai sword in his hand and chopped forward. Bang! The moment the blade collided with the wind blade, the sharp blade light cut the wind blade on the spot. Swish! The scattered wind blades flew to both sides of Uchiha Zan. Several large trees were hit by the wind blades, and the thick trunks were instantly cut by the wind blades, revealing a smooth surface. Quote exclamation mark question mark quote. Watching Uchiha Zan cut his ninjutsu with one sword, this situation caught Kazemaru off guard. Isn't this too outrageous? Apart from that, Konoha's White Fang, Hitaki Sakumo, how could another Uchiha be able to do this? It's not good to be distracted in battle. Chidori blade falling thunder. Uchiha Zan swung the blade in his hand, splashing 3 flashing lightning beams to slash at Kazemaru. Wind-style great breakthrough. Kazemaru reacted urgently, and immediately spit out a whirlwind from his mouth to disrupt the offensive of the lightning beam attack. Seeing this move by Fengwan, Uchiha Zan raised a smile. The lightning beam that was originally heading for Fengwan turned around and hit the sand shinobi behind him. These 3 sand shinobi were originally Grandmaster puppeteers. After losing their puppets, their combat power was far inferior to that of ordinary chunin. They could not resist Uchiha Zan's attack at all. The 3 were hit at the same time and were blown away more than 10 meters by the strong impact. Uchiha Zan also controlled his strength. He was not going to kill them all. He had to ask some information from them. Shave. The next moment, Uchiha Zan rushed to Fengwan, not giving him the opportunity to remember his companions. Wind style. Wind head. Fengwan quickly retreated and wanted to continue to perform ninjutsu. But Uchiha Zan did not give him this opportunity. How could he give the other party time to seal when he was close to him? In Fengwan's eyes, only a flash of lightning flashed. His hands, which were sealed, instantly flew up to the sky, and a fierce electric current invaded his body at the same time. Plop! Fengwan, whose whole body was paralyzed and stiffened by the electric current, fell to the ground helplessly. Blood was gushing from his wrists, but except for his eyeballs, his body could not move no matter how hard he tried. Solved. The Konoha shinobi who had just dispersed to various locations to intercept the sand shinobi were still a little dazed when they saw the battle that had ended. Uchiha Zan glanced at them, shook off the blood on the tip of the knife and said lightly, "Come and clean up the mess, I want to interrogate these sand shinobi." His tone was completely that of a superior ordering a subordinate, and it was also overbearing and would never allow questioning. The 2 Konoha shinobi who had gloated over the misfortune before felt cold all over when they were swept by his Sharingan. It was as if all their previous thoughts were seen through by Uchiha Zan. The Konoha shinobi were completely shocked by the scene before them, and they dared not underestimate Uchiha Zan in front of them anymore. Even though he commanded them in a commanding tone, they did not think there was anything wrong. Uchiha Zan used the fire style to cover his black flames and suck the vitality and chakra of the 2 dead sand shinobi dry. Uchiha Zan, who relived the beauty of ninja vitality and chakra, felt comfortable all over. Eating those beasts is indeed not as comfortable as eating people. On the way back, Tsunade couldn't help but sigh. You kid, you actually became so strong without my knowledge, I feel like you can already compete with me. Uchiha Zan didn't know why Tsunade was so thick-skinned. What do you mean by competing with you? I'm clearly surpassing you. In front of so many people, Uchiha Zan didn't say anything mean to hit Tsunade in the face. When the two were alone, teasing and mocking were okay, and it was considered a kind of mood. When there were many people around, Uchiha Zan still gave Tsunade a face. That's all thanks to your teaching as a teacher. Uchiha Zan replied calmly with a mechanical and stiff tone. The eyes of others looking at Tsunade were more and more respectful. Tsunade, who noticed the change in the eyes of the ninjas, was very happy. At this time, Uchiha Zan pulled Tsunade to the side and whispered, "It's not right if you don't give me some rewards later. What do you want to do? Just say it." Tsunade patted his chest and happily assured Uchiha Zan. Looking at the undulating majestic mountains, Uchiha Zan smiled evilly. "I hope you can use your sharp tongue and a sarcastic tone to mock me next time." Tsunade's expression froze, and she immediately hugged her arms to cover her huge body. She didn't expect that Uchiha Zan could have such a bad reward. But after a brief silence, Tsunade, with a red face, nodded gently. "I'll give it to you after I go back. Don't even think about it now." "Okay, I know my limits." Uchiha Zan responded to Tsunade with an okay, and then returned to the team. The ninjas quickly returned to the camp where they were stationed before. Seeing several people returning with the unconscious and immobile Sand Shinobi, they looked at Uchiha Zan with a little more awe and admiration. The previous perception ninjas lowered their heads and tried to minimize their presence. They looked at Fengwan with a determined look on their faces, knowing that simple interrogation would not get them anything. "We still have to hurry. Should we deal with them directly? I think we should send someone to send these Sand Shinobi back to Konoha for interrogation. Or how about taking them directly to the front line?" Several people started chatting, all planning how to deal with these Sand Shinobi. Since they had to rush to the front line, they had no time and tools to ask anything from these Sand Shinobi. Tsunade saw that everyone was hesitant, and then he set his sights on Uchiha Zan. "Xiao Zan, what do you think?" Seeing Tsunade's "listen to you" expression, Uchiha Zan had no choice but to stand up and take the lead. But at this moment, the Konoha shinobi present had lost their initial resistance. They all looked at Uchiha Zan quietly, ready to listen to his command. Noticing their performance, Uchiha Zan nodded slightly. He enjoys being respected and admired, but he doesn't want to be looked down upon. Uchiha Zan disdains to do things like pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger, because it is completely unnecessary. Uchiha Zan, who was standing in the middle of the crowd, immediately said in a loud voice, "Take these Sand Shinobi to the front line, and leave the interrogation to me." Seeing that Uchiha Zan had made the decision, everyone executed it without any objection. Everyone made way for Uchiha Zan to come to several Sand Shinobi. Illusion Sharingan. Uchiha Zan grabbed the leading elite Jonin Kazemaru and forced him to look at him. The next moment, Kazemaru, who was struggling hard, relaxed, and the pattern of Sharingan appeared in his eyes. This illusion Sharingan, like the Kagura Hard Eye of the Uzumaki clan, is a natural ninjutsu. So far, he has never failed once when using this ninjutsu. Uchiha Zan, who completely dominated Kazemaru, directly asked him to tell everything he knew. Uchiha Makoto next to him took out a booklet to record. Apart from the secrets about Tsunagaker, everyone also knew the mission of Kazemaru. In addition to his Sand Shinobi team, there are a total of 5 such teams. Their goal is to intercept the Konoha shinobi who are heading to the Land of Rain in the rear. Tsunagaker's goal is to reduce the number of Konoha shinobi sent to the Rain Shinobi village, so that the war between Konoha and Rain Shinobi village can be stalemate. As long as the war between Konoha and Rain Shinobi village is stalemate, Konoha must fight the enemy on 2 fronts, which is absolutely beneficial to Tsunagaker. The strategy deployed by the 3rd generation is to solve the Rain Shinobi village at the speed of a blitzkrieg, and then gather strength to defeat Tsunagaker in one fell swoop. Once Tsunagaker's action is successful, the direction of Konoha's war will enter an unknown place. This information must be reported to Konoha as soon as possible. Tsunade, who realized the seriousness of the problem, immediately sent someone to bring the information back. As for Kazemaru and the other 3 Sand Shinobi, they were taken to the front line according to Uchiha Zan's original plan. The next day, when Uchiha Zan and Tsunade arrived at the Land of Rain, the ninjas with the intelligence also returned to Konoha. The 3rd generation, who received the news, narrowed their eyes and tapped the pipe in their hands. Ha! Sand Shinobi actually had this idea. The 3rd generation snorted coldly and immediately ordered Anbu to secretly escort the next ninja team to the Land of Rain. The Sand Shinobi who intercepted their ninjas must be annihilated. After the order was given, when the 3rd generation learned that all this was due to Uchiha Zan, the expression on their faces was a little strange. Uchiha Zan's growth rate is really fast. He can defeat the Sand Shinobi team led by Elite Jonin alone. The 3rd generation murmured, thinking about something in his eyes. If it was the beginning, the 3rd generation might be happy about this. After all, at that time, he thought that Uchiha Zan was his faction. But after communicating with Uchiha Zan in the past 2 years, the 3rd generation gradually became calm. The other party did not buy into their will of fire at all, which made the 3rd generation very angry. Most importantly, Uchiha Zan stood on the side of the Hawks within the Uchiha clan. This created a natural gap between the two of them in secret. During the years when Senju Tobarama was in power, the hawkish Uchiha Satsuna attempted to launch a coup d'état, which was vivid in the 3rd generation's memory. Otherwise, the Uchiha clan today would not have been squeezed out of the power center of Konoha. However, the 3rd generation did not dare to suppress them too much, and promised that the Uchiha clan would make contributions in this war and let them move their clan land back to the center of Konoha. For this reason, he also paved the way for the dovish Uchiha Toyama faction members of the Uchiha clan, allowing them to go to the Sand Shinobi battlefield where it was easier to make meritorious deeds. If it can't be used for our own benefit, then it is necessary to eliminate this hidden danger. The 3rd generation took a deep breath and suppressed this thought in their hearts. Konoha is still in the aftermath of the war, and they cannot waste a useful combat force at will. If Uchiha Zan could make the best use of it and die for Konoha's victory, then he would not have to waste so much effort. Uchiha Zan and his party who arrived at the Rain Country front soon came into contact with Orochimaru and Jiraiya stationed there. The overall front of the Rain Country is very long. The current situation is that Konoha is crushing the Rain Shinobi village with its absolute number of ninjas and strength. And the Rain Shinobi village relies on its own terrain advantage and the strength of its leader Hanzo of the Salamander to fight stubbornly. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade, the 3 of them are now the commanders of the ninja army on the Rain Country front. Orochimaru and Jiraiya, wearing ninja uniforms, naturally welcome Tsunade, who is also a disciple of the 3rd generation. But when Jiraiya saw Uchiha Zan following Tsunade, his expression instantly fell. Jiraiya, who had a crush on Tsunade, certainly knew that Tsunade seemed to have a good relationship with her disciple. There were also rumors in Konoha village, that is, Tsunade seemed to like young girls. Looking at Tsunade, who was talking and laughing with Uchiha Zan, Jiraiya couldn't help but think of this rumor in his heart, and felt upset. He was depressed and didn't say a word, and his appearance didn't attract Tsunade's attention. Orochimaru's attitude was normal, but after hearing that Uchiha Zan defeated a Sand Shinobi elite team single-handedly in the middle of the game, he looked more serious. After imprisoning Kazemaru and the 3 Sand Shinobi, Tsunade brought Uchiha Zan and asked the two about the current battle situation. We have now surrounded the Rain Shinobi village. They rely on strong toxins and terrain to resist our attack. Orochimaru briefly explained and then looked at Tsunade. One of the main reasons why the 3rd generation sent Tsunade was to let her break the toxin of Hanzo of the Salamander. As long as this obstacle to their attack is cleared, Rain Shinobi village will not be able to hold out for long. Even after experiencing the consumption of the First Ninja World War, Konoha now has the confidence to despise the Rain Shinobi village that is not even ranked. Just as I expected, Zan, Makoto, you will go to the camp where the wounded are placed with me. I need to understand the injuries of the wounded and the severity of the toxins first, and then make a ratio to break it. Tsunade immediately agreed and immediately joined the war. Uchiha Zan naturally had no objection, but he still communicated with the Uchiha clan on the front line. He and Makoto found a problem. The Uchiha clan members on this front line are basically hawks. As for the doves of the Uchiha clan, they are basically on the front line with sand shinobi. Not only is this place dangerous, but even if we win against Rain Shinobi Village, we won't get any reputation. The third generation has a lot of little tricks. Uchiha Zan narrowed his eyes and snorted in his heart. The number of hawkish members of the Uchiha clan is already small, and the third generation's secret instigation is even worse. No wonder in the original work, Uchiha Fugaku was able to serve as the clan leader later. I'm afraid the third generation also helped behind the scenes. Unfortunately, at that time point, Konoha's oppression of Uchiha became even heavier after the war. Coupled with the Nine Tails Rebellion, Uchiha Fugaku was forced to become a hawkish person who wanted to rebel against Konoha. It can only be said that it is really ironic. Uchiha Zan is not ready to see such a thing happen. Uchiha Makoto's mood also sank, and he followed Tsunade's steps to the wounded camp. Among the injured ninjas, the ninjas of the Uchiha clan can be said to account for nearly 1/5. If any wounded died during the period, Uchiha Zan would personally burn them into ashes. If the bodies of the dead members were not handled, there was a possibility of plague. It was impossible to send people to send the bodies back intact, and ordinary ninjas did not have such treatment. Uchiha Zan was also among them, and he made a lot of money for himself. In just less than a week, Uchiha Zan restored all the pupil power consumed in his left eye. The overall chakra volume also increased significantly compared to before. I'm almost addicted to this feeling. Uchiha Zan showed a hint of intoxication on his face, and then quickly calmed down the restlessness in his heart. Tsunade arrived at the front line and began to crack the toxin of the salamander, and the Rain Shinobi village also knew about it. The ninjas of Konoha village were encouraged, while those of Rain Shinobi village were frowning. Hanzo of the salamander is even more aware of the importance of this. The only reason they can hold on until now is that Tsunagaku has delayed the main force of Konoha, and relied on terrain and poison to resist tenaciously. The strength of Rain Shinobi village itself is too weak, and the number and quality of ninjas are completely incomparable to Konoha. Therefore, Hanzo of the Salamander quickly organized ninjas to go to the Konoha camp to obstruct Tsunade's cracking progress. And relying on the terrifying perception of Kagura Hard Eye Hardnet, Uchiha Zan killed him before the opponent could make a move. In just 2 days, all 8 assassination attempts were stopped in advance by Uchiha Zan. Now Uchiha Zan's reputation on the front line is second only to Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade and others. After gradually realizing that there was a ninja with explosive perception ability on the Konoha front line, the assassination on the Rain Shinobi village side also stopped. It was difficult to raid the Konoha camp base. After 8 consecutive failures, Rain Shinobi village could not afford to consume high-end combat power. However, even if Rain Shinobi village stopped the offensive, Uchiha Zan did not stop. Uchiha Zan calmed down and asked Tsunade about the progress of the cracking, then he unfolded Kagura Hard Eye Hard Net again. In an instant, everything within a radius of 100 kilometers was perceived and projected into his mind. He continued to unfold Kagura Hard Eye Hard Net to inspect the camp as usual. After perceiving it once, Uchiha Zan showed a puzzled expression. It was not that he found a strange chakra, on the contrary, he found a very familiar chakra. Nawaki. Why did Tsunade's brother come to the front line? As Tsunade's younger brother and the future heir of the Senju clan, Uzumaki Mito kept a close watch on Nawaki. Normally, he didn't dare to let him leave Konoha for fear that something would happen to him. It was obviously unreasonable for Nawaki, who was only 12 years old, to come to the most dangerous front line of the Rain country during the war without notifying Tsunade in advance. Such a thing happened. He is at Orochimaru's camp. Are you looking for a teacher? Uchiha Zan knew the relationship between Nawaki and Orochimaru. They were master and apprentice. Uchiha Zan rarely saw Nawaki before, because Orochimaru always took Nawaki to do missions. Combining his memory of Nawaki's death in the Second Shinobi World War, Uchiha Zan smelled the scent of conspiracy. Uchiha Zan did not make a statement immediately. If Tsunade knew, she would definitely explode. He used the excuse that he had something to do, and then used Kagura's hard eye to restrain his own chakra and breath and quietly went to Orochimaru's camp. Magnet-style third eye. Uchiha Zan came to the vicinity of Orochimaru's camp and condensed a sand iron eye in his hand. He could peek at the corresponding picture through the perspective of this sand iron eye. As long as it was not an encrypted conversation, he could also understand the information through lip syncing. These were all sand iron refined by his chakra, and the range of manipulation was also extremely wide. Being within the coverage of Kagura Hard Eye Hardnet, Uchiha Zan can manipulate it to see any scene he wants to see. Together with the perspective of the sand iron eye, Uchiha Zan manipulated the third eye, and came to Nawaki's position. Just as he had sensed the chakra before, it was indeed Nawaki who arrived at the battlefield camp. In addition to Nawaki's chakra, Uchiha Zan also sensed 3 equally unfamiliar chakras nearby. They were different from the ninjas who invaded and assassinated Rain Shinobi village. They obviously followed Nawaki all the way. Nawaki's safe arrival at the front line is probably also due to the 3 ninjas who followed him. After all, with Nawaki's strength as the most chunin, it is completely unthinkable that he can arrive here alone. At this moment, Nawaki's face was full of excitement. He jumped up and shouted happily, "Great, I also succeeded in reaching the front line. Hee, I said I can do it. It's not like what Grandma said that I can't go here or there. I must shine on the battlefield and let my sister and Grandma see that I am an independent adult." Nawaki muttered, looking around like a monkey. In fact, he ran away secretly. There are very few ninja students like him who are the same age as Uchiha Zan and have already graduated and are still staying in the village. 3 days ago, when he ran to the Hokage office and chatted with the 3rd-generation grandfather, he heard that Uchiha Zan, who was in the same class with him, had become famous on the front line. He knew Uchiha Zan, who was his sister's disciple. They didn't meet much at ordinary times. At that time, he was doing missions with teacher Orochimaru. However, as the war broke out, Orochimaru went to the front line, and he was left in Konoha village. Hearing that his sister and Uchiha Zan had gone to the front line, and Uchiha Zan had made some achievements. When he thought that he was still in the village, Nawaki had the urge to fight for his reputation. Later, he sneaked out of the village and ran all the way to the land of rain. He was assisted by God along the way, and arrived at his destination after 2 days of eating and sleeping in the open air. "Don't tell my sister and Orochimaru first, I want them to see my own strength." Nawaki looked confident and went to the Konoha camp. The Root who escorted Nawaki also communicated with the ninjas in the camp according to the instructions. With the instructions of the 3rd-generation notebook, the ninjas in the camp did not directly report Nawaki's information. Nawaki saw that they did not report it, and thought that his plea had worked. Satisfied, Nawaki immediately asked a Konoha Jonin with great interest, "Can I join the mission soon?" The Konoha Jonin looked at him with an indescribable look of pity, sighed and nodded. He really couldn't understand why the 3rd generation would bring a note specifically, saying that they wanted this 12-year-old child to go to the battlefield to do a mission. Looking at Nawaki's silly and innocent appearance, it was obvious that he had never been exposed to related things before. But at this point, the Konoha Jonin didn't think about it anymore. "If you are so proactive, then there is a reconnaissance mission. Go to the border of the battlefield to investigate the whereabouts of Rain Shinobi, or check the traps they set. This mission is very dangerous, are you sure you want to go?" After the Konoha Jonin said it, he couldn't help but remind Nawaki. Such a reconnaissance mission is the 2nd most dangerous mission besides the frontline combat. To be honest, he really couldn't bear to let a child of Nawaki's age go. But Nawaki didn't hear the advice of the Konoha Jonin, he only heard that there was a mission to do. He immediately nodded and said seriously, "Of course I will go, don't underestimate me, I will become the man of Hokage in the future." Seeing Nawaki's silly look, the Konoha Jonin was silent. Uchiha Zan, who looked down with the sand iron eye, was also silent. "I didn't see Nawaki much before, and I really learned a lot today." Uchiha Zan felt that Nawaki was an enhanced version of Naruto. He was born without brains and overprotected by the day after tomorrow, which made this guy ignorant of the world. Originally, Uchiha Zan was still wondering why Uzumaki Mito was still in charge of the Senju clan. Now he finally understood that Tsunade was not suitable for politics, and she didn't want to be the head of any clan. Nawaki was even more of a heavyweight. Even if he wanted to be Uzumaki Mito, he probably wouldn't agree. The main point was that he had a hole in his brain. This fool was probably tricked into coming to the front. Several root ninjas escorted him all the way, probably because they didn't want him to die on the way. After all, dying on the way is absolutely unacceptable to the Senju and Tsunade. But if he died on the battlefield, he would be willing to die, and he could be a martyr. Neither Tsunade nor Uzumaki Mito would have a chance to attack him. Uchiha Zan used logic to gradually construct a result that was very close to the current situation from the only information he had. Uchiha Zan was speechless when he realized that Nawaki was courting death. But considering that he was half his brother-in-law, Uchiha Zan didn't really ignore it. Magnet-style sand iron mark. Some unnoticed sand iron flew out from the ground and attached to the corner of Nawaki's shirt. After making a mark, Uchiha Zan was going to go back and tell Tsunade about it. If he rushed over and dragged Nawaki away, he might have to fight with him if he didn't want to. Thinking about the possibility of such a thing happening, Uchiha Zan still felt that it was not small. If he really got into trouble with Nawaki, he would become a joke. He would not do such a thankless task foolishly. Uchiha Zan then jumped back and went all the way to Tsunade's experimental tent. Through the collected toxin samples, Tsunade was making an antidote to this toxin. Xiao Zan, where have you been? I need you to use the healing jutsu to experiment and see how strong it is to purify the toxin. Seeing Uchiha Zan appear, Tsunade immediately called him over. Now, in the entire camp, the only one who can match her medical level is Uchiha Zan. Without him, the progress of making the antidote by herself will definitely be several times slower. Okay, I have something to tell you. Uchiha Zan stepped forward and used the healing jutsu, gradually adjusting the amount of chakra to purify the toxins. While working, he also mentioned Nawaki. During my daily perception patrol, I found that Nawaki ran to the camp. There are several strange ninjas around him. I guess they are either Anbu or Root. Just now, Nawaki also took a reconnaissance mission. According to the Mark I anchored on him, he has already run to the front line. After Uchiha Zan briefly explained the situation, with a bang, the test tube in Tsunade's hand fell to the ground and shattered. Her beautiful bright brown eyes were oval. It seemed that because there were too many things to say, her mouth was blocked for a while, causing her to be silent for a long time. What the hell is Nawaki doing here at the front? There are people from Anbu or Root following him. What are they going to do? You said Nawaki also accepted a reconnaissance mission. Is he looking for death? Tsunade's roar resounded throughout the camp, and her chest rose and fell more violently than before. Uchiha Zan felt that her size seemed to have grown a little bit because of anger. Crack, crack, crack. Tsunade clenched her fists, and her fists made a crisp sound. She gritted her teeth and growled, "Where is that brat going now?" "He is going to the forest at the edge of the front line. It's not far from here. I can feel it." Uchiha Zan responded lightly twice, trying to keep himself innocent. Tsunade was even more angry when he heard what Uchiha Zan said. "You are getting more and more capable, and you are going to such a dangerous place. Hurry, you must go now." Tsunade took off her gloves and instruments, and didn't care about making the antidote now. The antidote will take at least 3 days to make, so it's useless to rush. But Tsunade knows his brother well. He is so simple and stupid that he might not survive a day on the battlefield. Makoto, continue to prepare it according to the process I told you before. After instructing Uchiha Makoto, Tsunade let Uchiha Zan lead the way and ran quickly towards Nawaki's location. At this moment, in Uchiha Zan's perception, Nawaki was still running foolishly in the forest. Nawaki, who had no perception ninjutsu and no relevant experience, was just relying on his intuition to explore there. Nawaki, who was alone in the forest at the border of the battlefield, was completely madly testing the edge of death in the eyes of Uchiha Zan. The root ninjas following behind Nawaki had no intention of stopping him, and just watched Nawaki die silently. As Nawaki continued to go deeper, he soon arrived at the area known as the minefield. He completely forgot about the problem of checking the traps set by range shinobi that Konoha Jonin had reminded him before. Now Nawaki's mind was only left with the idea of finding the whereabouts of Rain Shinobi, and then going back as soon as possible to report and perform well. As he was messing around, he actually noticed the footprints of a large group of ninjas under his feet. Nawaki, seeing this, became more and more excited and immediately quickened his pace. This idiot, didn't he see the obvious explosion trap in front? Even Uchiha Zan, who was observing through the sand iron eye, saw the explosion trap set by Nawaki in front. But this stupid boy is really blind. He rushed in with a fool. The three roots following Nawaki also noticed the explosion trap. They didn't expect that the expected plan would come so soon. They just followed Danzo's instructions to escort Nawaki to the front line. If Nawaki died accidentally, they would be responsible for recovering part of the body. As for what it was used for and what to do next, it was not within the scope of the root ninja's thinking. Yohu, facing the area with piled rocks in front of him, Nawaki jumped up excitedly and jumped in. Uchiha Zan, who saw this scene, was in awe. He tried to hold back his expression that wanted to laugh and stopped immediately. Magnet-style sand iron shield. He controlled the refined sand iron to wrap Nawaki's whole body before he landed at a distance of thousands of meters. Tsunade saw Uchiha Zan suddenly stop, and instinctively stopped and looked at him obediently. Before she could ask, a deafening explosion came from a distance. Boom! A flash of fire arose into the sky, and it was obvious that the power was not small. What happened? Could it be that Nawaki triggered the explosive trap? Tsunade's face turned pale, and he immediately thought that this might be caused by Nawaki. Uchiha Zan nodded slightly and breathed a sigh of relief. Kaido, it was him, but I just used ninjutsu to protect him. How did you teach Nawaki? Even the youngsters are not as stubborn as him. How dare he jump around in the minefield? His contemptuous eyes made Tsunade turn her head away guiltily. I don't know either. It's not me who takes care of him. I'm already a chunin. My parents gave birth to him. He was born more than 10 years later than me. My parents took care of him. Then he was taken care of by Grandma Mito, and then Orochimaru taught him. Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I'm not familiar with him. Even from Uchiha Zan's few words, Tsunade knew how horrible Nawaki was. She subconsciously distanced herself from him, and almost said that she didn't know Nawaki. Hearing Tsunade's words, Uchiha Zan showed a surprised expression. You still have parents? As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere at the scene suddenly became dead silent. Tsunade stared at Uchiha Zan dimly, gritted his teeth and growled, What do you mean I still have parents? Don't I have any? Do you think I jumped out of nowhere? Ahem, sorry, I just haven't heard you mention it before. Uchiha Zan explained awkwardly, looking at Tsunade curiously while hurrying on his way. Tsunade rolled her eyes at Uchiha Zan speechlessly and said, First of all, my parents are not dead. My father is from the Senju tribe, and my mother is an ordinary Konoha villager. Second, why should I mention them? They live well and are already in their 40s. Third, they integrated into Konoha according to their grandfather's teachings. They don't want to attract too much attention, and they specifically told me not to disturb them too much. After she finished speaking, Uchiha Zan coughed twice again. In her previous memory, there was no existence of Tsunade's parents, and she didn't mention them usually. Uchiha Zan always thought that she was like herself, with both parents dead. It turned out that she had both parents alive, but she lived independently and didn't disturb them. In order to change the subject, Uchiha Zan immediately said with a serious face. Nawaki's situation is not good. It should be the ninjas from the root who are attacking him. The root again, Danzo. Tsunade already knew that the ninjas who attacked him last time were ninjas from the root. This time, another root ninja appeared. It was obvious that the Senju tribe was being targeted by Danzo. Now Tsunade wanted to rush back to Konoha to pull Danzo out and beat him up. Tsunade was furious, but the three root ninjas who were going to collect the body of Nawaki were confused. In the pit covered by fire, a dark sphere appeared in the center. Ah, hot, hot. There were screams coming from the ball, and the sound reached Tsunade's ears. The root ninjas, who didn't know what was going on, looked at each other and attacked the sand iron ball at the same time. Oh my, you can't break my sand iron shield. Tsunade, Go over there quickly, I have to concentrate on controlling the sand iron to stop the 3 root Jonin. Uchiha Zan, who was 1,000 meters away, shouted to Tsunade. Although it was not clear what Uchiha Zan meant by sand iron, Tsunade still obediently ran towards the target he pointed at. Magnet-style sand iron hand. Uchiha Zan, who was concentrating his attention, directly performed a wave of remote micro-control. The sand iron he refined contained a lot of his chakra, so it could be remotely controlled. It can't last too long, but it is enough to deal with a few Jonin. The iron sand gathered into a giant black hand, stretched out from the ground and grabbed the root ninja who attacked the sand iron shield. The 2 root ninjas reacted in time and retreated and fled immediately. But one of them didn't have time to escape and was caught in the palm of the iron sand hand on the spot. Magnet-style sand iron binding kill. Uchiha Zan clenched his right palm suddenly, and in an instant, the iron sand hand burst out hundreds of iron sand spikes, stabbing the root ninja in the palm into a hedgehog. Reincarnation flame control. Uchiha Zan's right eye showed Mangekyo Sharingan. The next moment, his pupil power descended on the giant hand with the sand iron hand as the anchor point. The sand iron hand ignited a blazing black flame and directly cremated the body of the root ninja. The life force and chakra absorbed were temporarily lodged in the sand iron hand, further strengthening the strength of the sand iron hand. This is the new use of reincarnation that Uchiha Zan has developed in the past 2 years. His left eye's reincarnation is born with the ability to shape the released black flame, similar to Uchiha Sasuke's right eye inferno-style flame control. Attaching the black flame to his ninjutsu or even weapons, he can absorb the opponent's life force and chakra while attacking. And this long-distance release is the first time for Uchiha Zan. Seeing that the effect was actually good, he couldn't help but smile. Then next, magnet-style sand iron sealing cage. In order to prevent the root ninja from escaping, Uchiha Zan consumed his pupil power and chakra again. The overwhelming sand iron flew out from the ground, forming a sand iron prison with a sealing technique. It can be said that unless it is a space ninjutsu, ninjas below cage level will never escape. Earth-style soil submergence. A root ninja formed a seal to release Earth-style, trying to soften the soil on the ground and escape from the cage. And when his palm just hit the ground, the covered black flames were stained on his skin. His vitality and chakra were rapidly absorbed by the black flames, and his entire arm dried up and burned at a speed visible to the naked eye. Water-style waterfall technique. The companion next to him immediately formed a seal to release water-style, trying to extinguish the burning black flames. But when the water ball he spit out hit his companions, the black flames spreading on his arm did not extinguish at all. With the support of Uchiha Zan's pupil power, the black flame can also achieve the same indestructible effect as the pseudo Amaterasu. U2. When the 2 root ninjas didn't know what to do, Tsunade had already arrived not far from the sand iron cage. Seeing Tsunade's arrival, the root ninjas looked at each other and immediately bit the poison sac hidden in their mouths. The fierce poison killed the 2 root ninjas in just a few seconds. Tsunade, who saw this scene, could be said to have no time to stop it. When they arrived in front of the sand iron cage, the 2 root ninjas were already covered by the spreading black flame. Uchiha Zan didn't want to waste the bodies of the 2 Jonins. They were just dead and warm, and the vitality and chakra they absorbed were the most. Tsunade just watched the 2 root ninjas turn into ashes, and the sand iron cage also collapsed. The sand iron covering Nawaki also flew out, and together they gathered and flew towards Uchiha Zan. Zan did it. How could he know the magnet style of the 3rd cage? Although she was confused, Tsunade didn't think too much. She looked up at the center of the detonating trap, and Nawaki, who was lying on his back, was crying and covering his red feet and hands. The iron sand shield saved his life just now, but the high temperature of the explosion still burned his hands and feet. Stinky kid. Looking at the screaming Nawaki, Tsunade's expression was extremely gloomy. It was obvious that if it wasn't for the iron sand that saved him just now, Nawaki would definitely have died on the spot. If Nawaki, her own brother, died, she couldn't explain to Grandma Mito and her parents. Sister. Looking at Tsunade who appeared, Nawaki instantly forgot the pain and shrank his head like a frightened quail. When Uchiha Zan arrived, he saw Nawaki with a few bruises on his face and a big bump on his head. The injuries on his body were not treated at all, and he even had several more scars. Seeing Uchiha Zan coming, Tsunade immediately kicked Nawaki, who was lying on the ground. Go and thank Zan. If it wasn't him just now, you would have died a long time ago, you know. Ouch. Nawaki was kicked and flew away. His face fell on the ground for several meters, and finally he fell to the ground in front of Uchiha Zan. Looking down at Nawaki at his feet, Uchiha Zan didn't know if he would die. He tapped Nawaki's head with his shoes, and he raised his head like a zombie. That, hee, brother Zan, thank you, otherwise I, the future Hokage, would have died here. Looking at Nawaki's silly smile, Uchiha Zan suppressed the urge to step on him. You will die if you seek death, so get up and explain the matter clearly. Uchiha Zan also cared about his thanks, and released the healing jutsu in his hand to treat him first. A moment later, the reborn Nawaki jumped up immediately. Looking at the lively Nawaki, Uchiha Zan muttered, the physical fitness of the Senju clan is really good, and they recover much faster than ordinary people. Of course, it's a pity that this kid, like me, has not awakened the wood style that only Grandpa has. Tsunade echoed twice and glared at Nawaki unhappily. Nawaki immediately lowered his head and dared not speak casually again. He also understood that he was wrong this time, and the experience of life and death just now made him grow up a little. Glancing at the rude ninja who had been burned to ashes, Tsunade did not ask Uchiha Zan how he did it. In fact, since the two rude ninjas took poison, their true identities could not be determined. It was obvious that if he took the body to find Danzo, he could deny it. Tsunade, who was thinking quickly, knew that he really couldn't do anything to that old fox. The most important thing now was to find out how Nawaki ran here. Under the gaze of Tsunade and Uchiha Zan, Nawaki told everything he knew. From Nawaki's own perspective, he was not calculated. As he spoke, Nawaki showed his admiration for Uchiha Zan with a silly face. Brother Zan, I will let you be the big brother. Teach me the cool ninjutsu just now. The situation where the sand iron protected him just now was really handsome to Nawaki. Uchiha Zan gave him a slap on the head and said, don't think about it. This is magnet style. I figured it out by myself. You can't learn it. Zan is right. You should learn the family's ninjutsu first. Tsunade also nodded on the side. The two of them sang in unison and completely shut up Nawaki. After sorting out the information, the two looked at each other and discussed Nawaki's situation in a low voice. I guess the third generation has already wanted to take advantage of this war to cut off the inheritance of your Senju clan. Tsunade did not refute what Uchiha Zan said, and he couldn't refute it. At least from the current situation, his teacher, the third generation and Danzo, really have this idea. What's even more hateful is Danzo. The three rude ninjas he sent here clearly want to take away Nawaki's body. Tsunade knows what Danzo's purpose is without thinking. He is definitely interested in his grandfather's wood style. Therefore, Danzo wanted to use Nawaki's body to study the genes of the Senju clan. Tsunade was furious when she thought of this. Unfortunately, even if she wanted to find the other party now, she had no reason. She could only go back and tell her grandmother Mito about this. It's better to send Nawaki back quickly and let your parents take good care of him and don't run around. This is the only way, it's too dangerous here now. Uchiha Zan's thoughts were exactly the same as Tsunade's. She turned her head to look at Nawaki on the side and said, did you hear that? Do you understand the current situation? Nawaki scratched his head, not daring to have the slightest idea of refusing. After all, they were all beside him, listening to Uchiha Zan and Tsunade's analysis. Even though he didn't understand politics and had a simple personality, he wasn't really stupid. Nawaki, who knew he was being targeted, was also scared. When they were about to go back, Uchiha Zan sensed that there were ninjas coming this way, not from the direction of Konoha's camp. He immediately gave Tsunade and Nawaki a look, wrapped them in iron sand and hid in the dark. Soon, a dozen range shinobi appeared not far away. They checked the situation here and finally concluded that someone stepped on the explosive trap. As for whether the person was alive or not, they didn't know, so they could only go back and report. Konoha's front line is getting deeper and deeper, and such a situation is inevitable. If this goes on, won't our range shinobi village lose? Don't talk nonsense, the leader has already prepared an attack plan, let's go back quickly. A dozen range shinobi chatted for a few words and left immediately. As they left, Uchiha Zan condensed a little iron sand and covered them. He was quite interested in the plan mentioned by the range shinobi. If he guessed correctly, it was probably the general offensive strategy plan of Hanzo of the Salamander. Now the battle between range shinobi and Konoha is already at a disadvantage overall. Tsunade's antidote can be completely developed within at least a week. Even though the range shinobi village is not clear about the progress of Tsunade's development, they also know this future. If they don't want to surrender, they have to give it a try. But Uchiha Zan doesn't know when he will give it a try and when he will launch a general offensive. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade and others don't know either, so they can't counter this plan. Now maintaining the current front line is the safest strategy. I put a mark on range shinobi, and we'll see if we can get range shinobi's attack plan. We'll go back and prepare now. Range shinobi probably won't wait for us to develop an antidote for the toxin. Uchiha Zan turned around and said to Tsunade, and she nodded immediately. When the three of them returned to the camp, Tsunade was still a little dazed. Looking at Uchiha Zan, who was sensing the third eye next to him, Tsunade's heartbeat suddenly accelerated a lot. Obviously he's just a kid of the same age as Nawaki, but he feels really reliable. I seem to have been accustomed to obeying his arrangements since some time. As an adult, she should have protected everything and arranged everything. In front of Uchiha Zan, Tsunade found that her relationship with him seemed to be reversed. It's just that this feeling, Tsunade does not reject. When Tsunade was filled with emotion, Uchiha Zan had already opened his eyes. Range shinobi will launch a fierce attack on this camp in one day. Tsunade, call Orochimaru and Jiraiya and discuss countermeasures. I'll go right away. Looking at the tired Uchiha Zan, Tsunade responded and whispered, you should also go and rest, don't get too tired. Okay. Seeing Tsunade's gentle tone and expression, Uchiha Zan can be said to be scared. The last time I saw her like this, it was when she was drunk and could do whatever she wanted. You are so soft and cute. In your sober state, my heart can't bear it. You look like you have seen a ghost, what's wrong with caring about you? Seeing Uchiha Zan's surprised expression, Tsunade complained unhappily, and then got up and left. Before leaving, Tsunade couldn't help but pat her face and muttered, am I usually so fierce? Tsunade recalled, with a guilty expression on her face. She didn't say she was fierce, but she was certainly not very gentle. She was always carefree, and she got along with Uchiha Zan like a good friend. Throwing away all the messy thoughts in her mind, Tsunade rushed to explain the situation to Orochimaru, Jiraiya and others. When she came back exhausted from discussing tactical arrangements with Orochimaru, Jiraiya and others, she saw Uchiha Zan sleeping happily on Makoto's knees. The thought that she felt sorry for him before was thrown out of Tsunade's mind in an instant. Schwanjin, teacher Tsunade is here. Seeing Tsunade coming back, Makoto carefully pushed Uchiha Zan in her arms. The gentle movement seemed to be afraid of waking Uchiha Zan. Fortunately, Uchiha Zan didn't really sleep, and he opened his eyes leisurely. Seeing Tsunade coming back, he greeted leisurely, you're back, how did you discuss it? Uchiha Zan didn't get up at all, and asked Makoto with his head on his knees. Makoto, who was stared at by Tsunade, had a red face and was very shy. It can be seen that Uchiha Zan didn't move, she didn't push him away dotingly. Tsunade suppressed the jealous fire in her heart and spoke in a deep voice about the tactics she discussed with Jiraiya, Orochimaru and others. We plan to withdraw some of the ninjas in this camp and assign them to other fronts. When they launch a general attack, we will find a way to delay them and let the main force directly enter range shinobi village. Tsunade's strategy is also very simple, which is to use the enemy's strategy against them. But Uchiha Zan saw a problem, that is, Tsunade and the others did not estimate the strength of Hanzo of the Salamander. In today's era when cage level is at its peak, Hanzo of the Salamander is undoubtedly one of the top. Uchiha Zan wanted to avoid the sharp edge and not fight with it head-on. But he thought about it, even if he said it out loud, it would be useless. As the commanders, Orochimaru and Jiraiya could not just rely on Uchiha Zan's words that the opponent was strong and choose to retreat and escape. It is estimated that only Tsunade, who has big breasts, might listen to him. If this gets out, it will undoubtedly make them and Konoha lose face. More importantly, the battle line cannot be retreated. If the Konoha shinobi who do not delay Hanzo of the Salamander's other battle lines will suffer heavy losses. After thinking about it, Uchiha Zan nodded slightly and did not stop Tsunade and the others from discussing the plan. From the current point of view, Tsunade and the others' plan is not wrong. The only question is, when Hanzo of the Salamander attacks, can he hold him back or survive? So far, he has not really fought against cage-level ninjas, so Uchiha Zan cannot judge. No matter what, even if I lose, I will not die. Both eyes are full of pupil power. Even if I can't open the complete Susanoo, I can definitely deal with Hanzo of the Salamander, the demigod in the ninja world. Uchiha Zan has absolute confidence. At this moment, he is more excited than fearful. In his expectation, Hanzo of the Salamander, wearing a gas mask, has gathered a large number of Rain Shinobi troops in Rain Shinobi Village. Looking at the Rain Shinobi troops below, Hanzo of the Salamander feels heroic. From transplanting the poison sac of the poisonous black pepper fish that plagued the village into his body when he was young, to becoming the leader of Rain Shinobi Village step by step, to being worshipped as a demigod by the ninja world today. Hanzo of the Salamander's pride and confidence are naturally beyond words. The fact that Rain Shinobi Village is about to be defeated by Konoha can be said to be within his expectations. He is very strong and thinks that he will never be a shadow that merges a ninja village. But his Rain Shinobi Village is too weak. Even Tsunagaker of the Wind Country can completely crush Rain Shinobi Village. Therefore, it is not him who lost this war, but his ninja village. Even if Rain Shinobi Village lost to Konoha, it is not a shame for Rain Shinobi Village. This is precisely to announce to the world that the existence of his Rain Shinobi Village is qualified to declare war on Konoha. What he wants is to establish such prestige so that other ninja villages will restrain their actions. Before this, due to the special geographical location of the Rain Country, it is located at the junction of various countries. Ninjas from various ninja villages have been robbing and assassinating here, which makes the people of Rain Country miserable. It can be said that this is also the main reason why Hanzo of the Salamander led Rain Shinobi Village to start a war this time. And now what Hanzo of the Salamander has to do is to consolidate his gains from this war. In the previous war against the Iron Kingdom, they, Rain Shinobi Village, won. Not only did they plunder money and women, but they also got a lot of territory. Taking advantage of the struggle between the Wind Kingdom and the Fire Kingdom, he also annexed some surrounding territories. What he has to do now is to keep this part of the gains, so that Rain Shinobi Village will win this war. And to keep this gain, this war with Konoha must not be really won, but its spirit must be severely dampened. Once Konoha's Tsunade cracks his poison, then everything will be ruined. He must take a risk and complete this move before Tsunade develops an antidote to crack the toxin. Rain Shinobi Village will shine in the ninja world. The whole world will know that our Rain Shinobi Village is also a great ninja village. Let's go. Hanzo of the Salamander, standing on the stage, gave an impassioned speech and led the Rain Shinobi troops of hundreds of people to the Konoha camp where Tsunade was. Uchiha Zan, who sensed from afar, was speechless at Hanzo of the Salamander's words. Rain Shinobi Village can only spare more than 100 ninjas to fight now. You have no fighting power, so is it necessary to make a pre-war speech? Uchiha Zan complained in his heart and then shouted to Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya behind him, "Okay, they are coming." Mr. Uchiha Zan, your perception ninjutsu is really powerful. It saves us a lot of effort. Orochimaru, with a gloomy and pale face, smiled sinisterly and praised Uchiha Zan in front of him with a respectful tone. Although he gave people a feeling of being a villain, Uchiha Zan knew that he really didn't have that intention at the moment, he just simply praised him. The key point is that Orochimaru is still very polite. Except for his image, which makes people feel a little scared, everything else is okay, and Uchiha Zan did not reject him. After nodding slightly, Uchiha Zan asked, "How are your arrangements?" Now most of the ninja troops have set off, and traps have been set on their way forward. Tsunade spoke at this time, briefly explained, and then took out a few antidote pills that he had developed in a hurry. Because of the rush of time, there are only a few pills now. Although the efficacy of the medicine is not complete, it can temporarily suppress the toxicity of the salamander, and it is harmless to the body. Everyone's eyes lit up, and they immediately accepted the antidote pill. At this time, the marching Hanzo of the salamander can be said to be pushing all the way through the minefield. Boom! The detonation of another explosive trap in the rear caused the range shinobi force, which already had only 100 people, to lose several more people. Strange, there are too many traps. Hanzo of the salamander has noticed some problems. It is normal to set traps on the battlefield. But they have encountered too many traps along the way. Poison gas traps, explosive traps. Even if they check all the way, they can't clear them all. This has led to a continuous reduction in their operations. The army of hundreds of people before departure has now dropped to more than 80 people. Such a tragic loss of life has caused panic among the range shinobi troops. If Hanzo of the salamander, the leader of the range shinobi, was not here, the entire range shinobi army might not be able to move forward. Looking at the Konoha camp hundreds of meters away, Hanzo of the salamander gritted his teeth and shouted, "We must kill them no matter what. Those who retreat will be killed." When he shouted, the range shinobi had to go up. More than 80 people followed one after another, and after taking Hanzo of the salamander's toxin antidote, they headed towards the Konoha camp. Summoning technique Sansho Ibushi. Hanzo of the salamander at the back narrowed his eyes and formed a seal on the spot to decorate his own summoning beast luxuriously. Poisonous gas spray. He ordered Sansho Ibushi to release poisonous gas without hesitation. And Hanzo of the salamander was also on the side, forming a seal to release the wind style to cooperate and blow the poisonous gas towards the Konoha camp. It looks like it's time. Uchiha Zan, standing high above the Konoha camp, showed an extremely excited smile on his face. Magnet-style sand iron funeral. He just put his palms together, and the chakra in his body instantly overflowed like a vast ocean and poured into the earth. Orochimaru and Jiraiya, who saw Uchiha Zan's chakra fluctuations for the first time, were shocked by the terrifying equivalent. This is not right. The intensity of your chakra fluctuations seems to be several orders of magnitude higher than ours. Orochimaru and Jiraiya looked at Tsunade in shock, and Tsunade was also confused at this moment. In her memory, Uchiha Zan was at most a special Jonin. How come this move seemed to be stronger than her teacher? But their shock was soon covered by the sky full of sand iron flying out from the ground in front of them. The overwhelming sand iron rushed towards the range shinobi who were attacking the Konoha camp like a tsunami. Looking at the sand iron waves that were dozens of meters high, all the range shinobi showed desperate expressions. Boom! The sand iron waves came down with a bang, rolling more than 80 range shinobi into the sand iron sea. The heavy sand iron did not give them a chance to breathe, squeezing and ravaging their bodies, and pressing them hard under the ground. Reincarnation sacrifice. Uchiha Zan's concealed right eye revealed Mangekyo, deep underground that no one could see. More than 80 range shinobi buried in the iron sand were all covered by black flames. The endless vitality and chakra flowed into Uchiha Zan's body like a stream. Taking this opportunity, the 8-pointed star Mangekyo in Uchiha Zan's left eye spun rapidly. Based on the fusion of wind, earth, and fire chakra nature transformation, write me a portrait dust release. Now that he has sustainable vitality to restore his pupil power, Uchiha Zan simply bets everything and builds the bloodline elimination dust release that he wants most. He lowered his head, and the 8-pointed star in his left eye began to forcibly extract the 3 nature chakras in his body for fusion. Once, twice, 10 times. After continuous materialization and construction, the rotation speed of the 8-pointed star gradually decreased. Uchiha Zan lowered his head, and his body naturally felt like he could use dust release. However, as a price, his left eye was blurrier than ever before, and his body was also extremely tired. Noticing Uchiha Zan's sluggish state, Orochimaru and the others showed a puzzled expression. Uchiha Zan's posture just now didn't look like he would be weakened by one move. Did he use some secret technique to amplify his body to release ninjutsu, which caused him to be weakened? The 3 people who couldn't understand it didn't think about it anymore. Uchiha Zan had already made a great contribution, helping them clear so many range shinobi at once. Looking at the poisonous fog floating over, Orochimaru and Jiraiya immediately organized the Konoha shinobi around them to use wind style together. Wind style great breakthrough. Led by Orochimaru and Jiraiya, the wind style released by dozens of ninjas instantly rolled up a terrifying storm. Hanzo of the Salamander is not Uchiha Madara after all, and it is impossible for a fire style to defeat the water style of the combined forces of the Ninja Alliance. The purple-black poisonous fog was quickly blown back, but he was not affected by the gas mask he was wearing. He stared at Uchiha Zan and his group not far away, and now he wanted to eat Uchiha Zan. The more than 80 range shinobi just now were the foundation of their range shinobi village. They seemed to have known my action plan in advance. Which undercover leaked it, and even my route of action was known. Hanzo of the Salamander was so angry that his fists were clenched white, and the appearances of several close people kept flashing in his mind. But at this point, he had no time to think about it. There were only two things in front of him, run or stay. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade and the others only brought dozens of ninjas. This means that a large part of the Konoha shinobi may have launched a full-scale attack on Range Shinobi Village. Whether to run or stay, Range Shinobi Village has lost completely this time. But there is still a chance. If we leave these three famous third-generation disciples of Konoha as hostages, Range Shinobi Village can save some face. Hanzo of the Salamander's eyes flashed coldly, and he made a decision quickly. He is in his middle age, and his strength is at its peak. His heart is not like an old man who compromises. Escape is also an unacceptable shame for him. Only victory can wash away the failure of his decision this time. Inoue, let's go. Ninjutsu Poison Mist Technique. Hanzo of the Salamander, riding on the head of the salamander Inoue, single-handedly killed towards the Konoha camp. As he approached, he took off the mask on his face and spit out a cloud of thick poisonous mist. This time, he released all the toxins in the poisonous sac of the highly toxic salamander implanted in his abdomen without reservation. The thick and highly toxic mist, under the catalysis of Hanzo of the Salamander's chakra, was not easily dispelled by ordinary wind style. And Hanzo of the Salamander, who had already come to kill them, would not give them this time. Water style Water Dragon Bomb Technique. Hanzo of the Salamander put on the mask again and quickly formed seals with both hands. In an instant, a huge water dragon with a hideous face condensed out of thin air. Some of the poisonous mist in the air even combined with it, turning it into a terrible ninjutsu that could poison and kill people if touched. Looking at the rushing water dragon, Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Tsunade and Uchiha Zan could dodge it, but the dozens of Konoha shinobi behind them were not so easy. They tried to evade by dispersing, but because Hanzo of the Salamander's attack was too fast, more than a dozen ninjas were hit in an instant. Several Konoha shinobi who were hit by the water dragon bomb had their internal organs burst and exploded on the spot. The splashing poisonous liquid also splashed on the mouths, eyes, and skin of the people nearby. Many people were blinded on the spot, and the worst skin was as red as if it was poured with boiling water, and the whole body was in great pain. Water style Water Dragon Bomb Technique. Hanzo of the Salamander succeeded in one strike, simplified the seal again, and quickly blasted the killing move at Uchiha Zan who was standing still. Uchiha Zan, who had already completed the painting at this moment, suddenly raised his head. Fire style How Long Huo Technique. Uchiha Zan just clapped his hands, and the large amount of chakra gathered in his body was compressed and condensed, and spit out from his mouth. A lifelike fiery dragon appeared in the air. Sizzle. The scorching heat evaporated the poisonous fog in the air, and the roaring dragon was instantly divided into 5 ferocious dragons under the control of Uchiha Zan. Bang! One of the dragons pounced on the water dragon bomb and blasted it through and evaporated it in a breath. Using the rising air currents brought by the high heat flames of the dragon, Uchiha Zan carried the thick poisonous fog and sent all the poisonous fog into the sky. The remaining 4 fire dragons were still strong, and they attacked Hanzo of the Salamander riding on the summoning beast from 4 directions. This intensity of fire style. Did Konoha send a strong man from the Uchiha clan? Even though the fire dragons had not yet approached, the heat wave that hit Hanzo of the Salamander made it clear how terrifying these 4 fire dragons were. Water style Water Instant Body Technique. Hanzo of the Salamander, who did not dare to take it head-on, formed a seal with one hand, and instantly turned into a pool of water style and walked away, avoiding the attack of the 4 fire dragons. But the salamander under him was not so fast, and was hit head-on by the 4 fire dragons on the spot. The impact of the explosion instantly flew it hundreds of meters away, and the scorching heat and the damage from the explosion made its skin and flesh torn, emitting bursts of burnt meat smell. The salamander had thick skin and flesh, and although it was hit, the injury was not enough to affect its movement. Seeing Hanzo of the salamander being forced back by Uchiha Zan, Jiraiya and Orochimaru immediately launched a siege when he appeared somewhere else in an instant. Earth-style yellow spring swamp. Orochimaru slapped the ground with both palms, and immediately created a huge swamp under Hanzo of the salamander. Jiraiya understood, held the oil refined by chakra in his mouth, and used fire style to burn it while spitting it out. Fire style flame bomb. The next moment, the scorching fireball flew towards Hanzo of the salamander. The boiling hot oil and the burning flames did not give Hanzo the same impression as the Gaolong Huo technique, released by Uchiha Zan, but it was definitely not something he could take head-on. Water style water barrier. Hanzo of the salamander used his most proficient water style to raise a water wall to block the attack of the fireball. He himself quickly broke free from the swamp, holding a chain sickle coated with poison, and rushed towards Jiraiya and Orochimaru. While the 3 of them were fighting, Tsunade bit his thumb and pressed it to the ground. Summoning technique Katsuyu. The Katsuyu of the wet bone forest appeared in the air. Katsuyu understood and immediately split into many small Katsuyu, dragging the poisoned wounded to the corner for treatment. Tsunade came to Uchiha Zan in an instant and asked anxiously, "Are you not injured?" Uchiha Zan's condition suddenly deteriorated just now, which really scared her. "Well, it's just a temporary breathing problem. I'm fine." Uchiha Zan nodded slightly, staring at the Hanzo of the salamander that had begun to occupy the upper part in the distance, and responded to Tsunade. The remaining rain shinobi under the sand iron wave are constantly being squeezed of their last vitality and chakra. After all of them were poured into Uchiha Zan's body, although they could not make up for the consumption of deducing dust release, they were enough to support him in the battle. And when he fought with Hanzo of the salamander, Uchiha Zan actually had a feeling. That was that Hanzo of the salamander was not as strong as he imagined. The most important thing is his poison, which made Hanzo of the salamander what he is today. If you take away the poison, Hanzo of the salamander is not unmatched in the cage level. But for Jiraiya and Orochimaru, who have just reached the cage level, Hanzo of the salamander in front of them is an extremely powerful enemy. Lion hair technique. Jiraiya used chakra to extend and harden his hair, forming a lion's head shape in an attempt to entangle and chop Hanzo. But as soon as his long hair was thrown out, the chain sickle in the hand of Hanzo of the salamander swung away. Shua. The sickle predicted the route of Jiraiya's attack and easily cut off his long hair. Seeing that the attack failed, Jiraiya retreated immediately. Orochimaru looked at him, and the 2 used summoning technique at the same time. Summoning technique Gamabunta. Summoning technique Many Snakes. Bang bang. 2 puffs of white smoke rose, and a giant red toad with a giant pipe in its mouth, a bandage around its waist, and a dagger inserted in it, and a huge purple python appeared on the battlefield. Tsunade and Uchiha Zan also rushed to the battlefield at this moment. Facing the people who surrounded them with full firepower, Hanzo of the salamander raised a sarcastic smile under his gas mask. "If it's just this level, then defeat me." The Sanshoyu Ibushi, who had been crawling behind Hanzo of the salamander, suddenly puffed up his cheeks. After 5 minutes of charging, the Sanshoyu Ibushi was able to release poison gas again. From the Sanshoyu Ibushi's open bloody mouth, a ball of purple poison mist that was almost liquefied instantly poured out. Uchiha Zan quickly pulled Tsunade beside him and used shave to move away from him by dozens of meters. Jiraiya and Orochimaru didn't react that quickly. Woohoo! The thick poisonous fog sprayed all over their faces. Jiraiya and Orochimaru, who had taken the antidote pills in the experimental stage beforehand, were weak but not dying. But Gamabunta and Manja were really suffering. They had just come out and were sprayed with poisonous gas. The key point was that the poisonous gas was so strong that even they were knocked down immediately. The 2 summoning beasts looked at Jiraiya and Orochimaru with a "fool you, look on their faces, wishing they could slap them in the face. You summoned us out just to be meat shields, right? Send them to Katsuyu the sage, only he can save their lives. Jiraiya and Orochimaru, who were retreating, shouted at Tsunade immediately. They didn't expect that Hanzo of the Salamander actually had this trick. You are too careless, and your reaction speed is not as fast as my little Zan. Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya and Orochimaru with contempt, and did not forget to praise Uchiha Zan who saved her. Strictly speaking, she didn't react. Fortunately Uchiha Zan pulled her away. Facing the proud Tsunade, Jiraiya and Orochimaru hesitated to speak. They also wanted to say that you relied on Uchiha Zan, but who made Uchiha Zan Tsunade's apprentice, they were powerless to refute. Uchiha Zan looked up at the black clouds gathering in the sky and pulled out the samurai sword behind him. I'll stop him for a while, you guys recover as soon as possible. As soon as he finished speaking, Uchiha Zan rushed out in an instant, so fast that the three people around him couldn't react. So fast, Hanzo of the Salamander's pupils shrank, and he immediately raised his sword to meet the enemy when he saw Uchiha Zan approaching him in an instant. Bang! The blade of the chain sickle instantly collided with the blade of the samurai sword. As the fire exploded, Uchiha Zan, who failed to hit the target, showed 3 Tomo Sharingan in his eyes. Uchiha clan. Hanzo of the Salamander, who had rich combat experience, quickly closed his eyes, and his right arm burst out with great force to push Uchiha Zan back several meters. You really know about the Uchiha clan. Uchiha Zan smiled, and lightning-style chakra immediately poured into the blade. Zzz. The harsh sound of electricity resounded throughout the venue, causing Hanzo of the Salamander, who had his eyes closed, to frown. Chidori Blade Reikiri. Uchiha Zan attached lightning-style chakra to the blade through the chakra transformation, further strengthening the sharpness of the blade. Uchiha Zan, holding the blade with one hand, attacked Hanzo of the Salamander standing in place from the flank amid the roaring sound of electricity. Tsunade also cooperated with her and attacked with the force of thunder. Super Strength Iron Fist. She integrated the 6 styles iron body she learned into her super strength. When using super strength, she tightened her muscles. This made her fist heavier and faster, and the force increased exponentially. Hanzo of the Salamander, who dared not open his eyes and whose hearing was disturbed by the sound of electricity, formed a seal with one hand. Fire-style detonation flame formation. All the detonating talismans buried on the ground flew up beforehand while others were not paying attention. Uchiha Zan and Tsunade, who were approaching, were immediately entangled with the detonating talismans on their legs. Hanzo of the Salamander used his free hand to throw out the chain on his sickle and swept it around. Bang bang. With 2 muffled sounds, Tsunade and Uchiha Zan were both forced back by the chain. Flying in the air, the detonating tags on their legs were about to explode. Jiraiya and Orochimaru, who were weak from the poison, had no time to rescue them at this moment. However, the 2 people in the air did not show any panic on their faces. 6 styles iron body. The 2 people simultaneously stimulated the flow of chakra in their bodies, making their bodies harder than steel. Boom! A violent explosion sounded instantly, and the sky-high flames enveloped Uchiha Zan and Tsunade. Success! Hanzo of the Salamander opened his eyes and showed a surprised expression. However, the surprise on his face did not last for a few seconds, and 2 figures fell from the air. Boom boom! When the ground shook, Uchiha Zan and Tsunade both landed safely. The injured legs of the 2 were exposed to the air at the trouser legs that were torn by the explosive talisman. The legs that should have been charred or even broken only had traces of burns at this moment. 100 healings mark heal. The 2 simultaneously mobilized the chakra stored in the 100 healings mark to quickly heal the injuries on their legs. Just a few breaths of staring at each other, the calves with burn marks were completely renewed. The snow-white skin was quite eye-catching on the dark rainy day with thunder. Hanzo of the Salamander, who saw this scene, felt a sinking feeling in his heart. Tisk tisk tisk, in terms of combat experience, I am indeed not as good as you, and my swordsmanship and tactics are far inferior. Standing in place, Uchiha Zan looked at Hanzo of the Salamander in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. If it weren't for the powerful attack prediction of Kagura Heart's Eye Hardnet and the insight of Sharingan, he really wouldn't be able to fight against Hanzo of the Salamander in a simple fight. The natural gap in combat skills and tactical application widened the gap between them, who were equally strong. Uchiha Zan also realized that this was one of his shortcomings. Most of his combat skills and tactical application came from fighting each other among Shadow Clone. The experience of fighting with real enemies is really rare. You satisfy me, Hanzo, but it's time to end it. After sighing, Uchiha Zan threw the samurai sword in his hand. The sharp tip of the blade pierced the ground and nailed it hard. Seeing Uchiha Zan abandon his weapon, not only Hanzo of the Salamander was puzzled, but Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru were also confused. What end? Even if you all come together, you are not my opponent. Hanzo of the Salamander snorted coldly and raised the chain sickle in his hand. How could he, who was respected as the demigod of ninja world, admit defeat to the group of juniors in front of him? As long as the salamander behind him finished charging, it would spit poison gas again. If he cooperates, Hanzo of the Salamander is confident that he can defeat Uchiha Zan and Tsunade in front of him. No, it's over. Uchiha Zan interrupted Hanzo of the Salamander's words, condensed lightning in his hand and threw it upward. Buzz, rumble rumble. The moment the lightning sank into the clouds, the overwhelming thunder and lightning were triggered. The surging thunder like huge waves and waves gathered into a vast ocean that flashed and exploded in the sky. The great power of nature, just the moment it appeared, shocked everyone present. Uchiha Zan attracted the Chidori he threw into the clouds, and in the astonished eyes of everyone, the lightning condensed and deformed, and finally turned into a roaring Kirin. Lightning-style Kirin, Uchiha Zan whispered softly, and waved his right hand towards Hanzo of the Salamander in the distance. Roar! The thunder transformed into a Kirin opened its huge mouth, and the thunder resounded through the world like a roar. Hanzo of the Salamander stood there, staring at the sky with a dull look. The dazzling lightning blocked his sight, and before he could move his body, the Kirin had already descended. Before the white light filled everyone's eyes, the last scene they saw was the terrifying Kirin that had descended and bit the ground. Boom! Sizzle! The entire battlefield was instantly covered by lightning. The powerful lightning impact shattered the earth, and the aftermath of the venting lifted Orochimaru and Jiraiya, who were 100 meters away, into the air. And in the center of the battlefield, an area that no one could observe, Uchiha Zan held Tsunade in one arm and held her in his arms. The golden Susanoo skeleton stood in front of him to resist the impact of the Kirin explosion. After a while, when the lightning faded, Uchiha Zan also retracted the Susanoo. Tsunade, you can't tell anyone about this. Ah. The dazed Tsunade nodded subconsciously. Seeing that she was still dazed, Uchiha Zan slapped her round buttocks. Snap! The waves rose and fell, and the pleasing scene was accompanied by Tsunade's scream. Ah! Rubbing her slightly painful buttocks, Tsunade also reacted and then widened her eyes. That lightning style, and the skeleton just now. A huge amount of information hit her brain, making Tsunade unable to process it for a while. Anyway, don't tell anyone, think about it yourself. Taking advantage of Tsunade's confusion, Uchiha Zan pinched her hard again, and then immediately ran to the center of the Kirin bombing. Looking at Uchiha Zan running away, Tsunade, who was rubbing her buttocks, felt embarrassed and annoyed. She looked around and breathed a sigh of relief when she found that the area was still covered in smoke and dust. It's okay if no one sees it, otherwise it's too embarrassing. It's not necessary to make people come to their senses, this little ghost, he's not little anymore. Tsunade muttered in her heart, staring at Uchiha Zan's back. She recalled the golden skeleton that protected her just now, and couldn't help but think of the divine power that the Uchiha clan would get when they opened the Mangekyo Sharingan in the Senju clan records. According to rumors, that was the power that Uchiha Madara mastered at the time, which could rival her grandfather Senju Hashirama. But so far, Tsunade has never seen the Uchiha clan show it. But today, I seem to have seen it on Uchiha Zan. Does this mean that he has opened the Mangekyo Sharingan? Is it so outrageous? He is only 12 years old. Although he is like an adult at ordinary times, his body is also, but after all, he is just a child. Tsunade's heart was in turmoil, while Uchiha Zan was only excited. Uchiha Zan found the body of the salamander. Under the body of the summoning beast, he found the dying Hanzo of the salamander. His reaction speed was really fast. He pulled his summoning beast to defend the arrival at the last moment. Unfortunately, your operation is meaningless in the face of absolute damage and value. Hanzo of the salamander opened one eye weakly, as if he wanted to say something. Before he could say anything, Uchiha Zan grabbed his throat with one hand and lifted him up. Transfer soul sacrifice. The surging black flames surged from his palms, covering Hanzo of the salamander's body. At the same time, a black flame flew out, covering the body of the salamander next to him. Mangekyo. Hanzo of the salamander used his last strength and said his last words with a horrified look. The black flames that plundered life immediately took his life. His body dried up until it turned into a handful of dust. Uchiha Zan closed his eyes tightly, feeling the surging vitality and chakra surging in his body. After a while, Uchiha Zan opened his eyes, and the 8-pointed star Mangekyo flashed in his pupils. The pupil power of my left eye has recovered half, and my vision has not been affected. My body functions and chakra have improved to varying degrees, and my body seems to have an additional toxic antibody. Uchiha Zan looked at the pool of venom left by the salamander Ibushi, and directly cut a hole in the palm of his hand to let the venom seep into the wound. With life return, he can manipulate the cells of his body. If he really can't resist the toxins of the salamander, he can abandon the cells in his palm. In Uchiha Zan's eyes, the toxins that invaded the wound spread rapidly. But he didn't feel weak at all. His blood quickly purified the toxins and completed the detoxification by himself. Uzumaki Sage Body combined with the toxic antibodies obtained from Hanzo of the salamander makes my body resistant to toxins and even immune to the toxins of salamander. Uchiha Zan couldn't help but smile. He knew very well how toxic the toxins of salamander were. Even Hanzo of the salamander himself, who had toxic antibodies, was immune to ordinary poisons at most. He couldn't stand the toxins of salamander. Now he was even immune to the toxins of salamander. In human terms, this was immune to all poisons. Uchiha Zan, who usually used poison, knew the importance of this feature. Now, even if he was accidentally poisoned, it would not affect his combat power too much. And he could also use this characteristic to use poison as a way of attack. No longer applying it to weapons or iron sand, he could directly use large-scale poison gas, which was considered a mutual destruction move in the eyes of ordinary people. The more Uchiha Zan thought about it, the brighter his smile became. Tsunade, who came closer, saw his smile and shuddered. He is definitely thinking about something bad. This thought immediately popped up in Tsunade's mind. At this time, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and some Konoha shinobi also approached here. Looking at the ashes of Hanzo of the salamander's body and the ashes of Sanshoyu Ibushi on the ground, they understood that Uchiha Zan killed Hanzo of the salamander. Master Uchiha Zan! Master Uchiha Zan! I don't know who started shouting, and then the remaining Konoha shinobi shouted excitedly. Now in the eyes of the ninjas, Uchiha Zan's position in their hearts has surpassed Tsunade, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya. Jiraiya and Orochimaru also looked at Uchiha Zan with complicated eyes. No matter how much they deny it, the lightning-style Kilin just now is enough to kill them instantly. This has already shown that Uchiha Zan, who is only 12 years old, is already stronger than them. Orochimaru's eyes occasionally glanced at Uchiha Zan's eyes, and he sighed in his heart. The blood of the Uchiha clan actually has such strong potential. Compared with Jiraiya, Orochimaru and others, Tsunade's mood is simpler. She is simply happy for the current Uchiha Zan, and of course she is also ashamed of his little action just now. While cleaning up the mess here, the Rain Country also received good news from various fronts. In order to launch a general attack, Hanzo of the Salamander also drew away some of the elite Rain shinobi on the Rain Country front. And Tsunade's previous plan further increased the number of Konoha shinobi on the front. This made the front line appear one-sided in a short period of time. Uchiha Zan had not rested for 2 hours, and the Rain shinobi village had been taken down by Konoha. The news of Hanzo of the Salamander's death also spread throughout the ninja world with the fall of Rain shinobi village. The deeds of Tsunade, Orochimaru, Jiraiya and the other three, who cooperated with Uchiha Zan to kill the enemy, also spread. When the news reached Konoha village, the people spontaneously gave them nicknames. Since Tsunade, Orochimaru, Jiraiya and the other three were all disciples of the third Hokage, they were directly called Konoha Sannin together. Uchiha Zan, who was the most outstanding in the deeds, finally killed the demigod Hanzo of the Salamander with lightning-style Kirin, and was specially called Konoha Thunder God. When Uchiha Zan heard this nickname, he had a speechless expression on his face. Do people like to give people nicknames so much? Have you asked for my opinion? I am not just a lightning style. It's a pity that his words alone cannot shake the title that has gradually become a consensus in the ninja world. The hawks of the Uchiha clan who learned of this news can be said to be grinning every day. Uchiha Shinji now wants to bring his baby Uchiha Zan back immediately to inherit his position as the leader of the Uchiha Hawks. Even among the doves of the Uchiha clan, most of them have developed admiration for Uchiha Zan and have turned to join the Hawk camp. After all, there is no news about Uchiha Fugaku on your side, and Uchiha Zan on the other side is younger than him, but he has become famous. Some are happy, some are sad. While the Uchiha clan was overjoyed, the third generation and Danzo in the Hokage's office were gloomy. At only 12 years old, how could he cooperate with Tsunade and others to kill Hanzo of the Salamander of Rain Shinobi village? The third generation looked at the information given by Anbu, and after confirming it again and again, they still looked incredulous. This is really unbelievable. He was not even a Jonin when he was 12 years old. Danzo also had a gloomy face, and suddenly raised his head and said, "Is there a possibility that it is the Mangekyo Sharingan of the Uchiha clan?" It is said that as long as the eyes are open to Mangekyo, members of the Uchiha bloodline can have the strength to rival Kage level. As soon as he said this, the third generation took a deep puff of cigarette. Although this statement is also outrageous, it seems to be the most likely result for the Uchiha clan. The third generation still vaguely remembers that their teacher, Senju Hashirama, and Uchiha Kagami stayed behind to guard the rear. After the teacher died in battle, Uchiha Kagami activated the Mangekyo Sharingan and wiped out the pursuing Golden Horned forces in one fell swoop. At the end of his life, he showed such terrifying combat power that even though he was several kilometers away from the battlefield at that time, he could still see the standing Susanoo. Just one sword could break the mountains. Even with his current strength, he was not sure to fight against Uchiha Kagami at that time. Finally, the third generation knocked on the pipe in his hand and said coldly, "This matter cannot be confirmed yet. What is certain is that Uchiha Zan has developed a lightning-style ninjutsu that is enough to kill Kage level. In any case, the existence of this inherently evil Uchiha brat has already threatened us. Last time, so many Senju ninjas from the Whirlpool country came back. I suspect he was behind it." Danzo never hesitates to speculate on the development of a matter with the most despicable ideas. But this time, the explanation he put forward made the third generation feel a little convinced. Thinking back carefully, the last time Uchiha Zan brought back the orphan of the Uzumaki clan, it was indeed very suspicious. We should be more vigilant. Your good apprentice Tsunade may stand with the Uchiha clan because of this evil kid. Tsunade's brother Nawaki, he is alive and well now. He didn't die on the battlefield as you wished. Danzo reminded the third generation loudly, making the third generation's face even gloomier. His original intention was to further weaken the presence of the Senju clan in Konoha village. After all, if there is no heir to the leader in the future, how can it be a force? But now the development of the situation is really deviating more and more towards the goal of his plan. Thinking of this, the third generation touched the wound on his face. Uzumaki Mito also knew about Nawaki, and she almost made a big fuss in Konoha. If she hadn't beaten him up and promised him many conditions, third generation felt that Uzumaki Mito really wanted to kill him. The other party was about to die, and with the identity of Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, he really couldn't offend her before she died. Even if he knew the other party's weakness, he couldn't be too presumptuous. This time he was just secretly provoking, and it was mainly Nawaki who was asking for death. If he really took action against Nawaki, then Uzumaki Mito might really be incompatible with him. After careful consideration, third generation showed a sharp eagle-like look, the plan against the Senju tribe will be put on hold for the time being. Now Uchiha Zan is too famous, so he must be suppressed and cannot be allowed to participate in the war for the time being. Danzo, don't alarm the snake, let your roots monitor his whereabouts at all times, and we will make a decision later. The increasingly fierce war is still the main theme after all. Konohagakure and Sunagakure have already fought, and Rain Shinobi Village has just won. The third generation still has to keep an eye on the movements and intentions of other ninja villages. He has too many things to do now, so he can only put Uchiha Zan's matter aside for the time being. Danzo's face was dark, and he shouted unhappily, "You have already seen the disaster that threatens Konoha, why do you turn a blind eye, Hiruzen, which side are you on?" Uchiha Zan is now being elected as the leader of the Hawk faction in the Uchiha clan. If he really becomes the patriarch of the Uchiha clan in the future, the entire Uchiha clan will become a disaster. In the face of Danzo's questioning, the third generation just glanced at him coldly and said indifferently, "Danzo, I am the Hokage. Remember, you are the root. I took the responsibility for you sending Gen to track down Nawaki. You acted on your own accord. Do you know how much trouble this caused me?" Quote. Danzo was blocked by these two sentences, and he was holding back his anger. "I know you are the Hokage. Is there any need to emphasize it? You are just trying to provoke me, right? If I hadn't been timid that time, how could you have taken away the position of Hokage? Didn't you also acquiesce in the matter of Nawaki? You said it as if it was all my idea." Danzo was very annoyed, and couldn't help but recall the time when his teacher Senju Tobarama discussed who would be the bait during the First Ninja World War. At that time, he had the idea of volunteering to be the bait, but he hesitated at the critical moment. Who knew that Hiruzen would get there first, and in the end, it was still teacher Tobarama and Uchiha Kagami who went to be the bait to stop the troops of Kinkaku and Ginkaku. If it weren't for this incident, Danzo felt that with his talent and ability, he would never lose to the third generation. This resentment accumulated in his heart, and it can be said that it is growing day by day. Humph. Quote. After glaring at the third generation, Danzo snorted coldly and walked away. After they finished discussing and passed the order, Uchiha Zan and Tsunade, who received the message from Konoha, have been in the land of rain for almost a month. The old man asked us to go back to Konoha to rest. The current war situation is not very urgent. Tsunade raised the secret letter in his hand unhappily and said something to Uchiha Zan, Orochimaru, Jiraiya and others. They all nodded calmly, and were not surprised by the late secret letter. If there was really any arrangement, the third generation would have sent it out long ago. It took so long to seal the secret letter, obviously there was nothing for them to do. As the war situation in the land of wind so stable that we don't need to intervene. Quote. Orochimaru frowned, he still wanted to do something for Konoha. And he wanted to accumulate the necessary reputation in the war. Orochimaru was also going to grab the position of the future fourth Hokage. Therefore, he was unhappy with Konoha's arrangement. Jiraiya shrugged and said indifferently, "Who knows, I haven't heard much news. Anyway, the third generation old man doesn't let us take care of it, so we are just happy to be idle." He stretched and prepared to continue sleeping. Tsunade looked at them like this, then looked at Uchiha Zan and asked, "Shao Zan, should we go back or continue to stay in Rain Shinobi Village?" Quote. Tsunade had no opinion on whether she should stay or go. She had become accustomed to it and liked to hear what Uchiha Zan thought. Gulp. After swallowing the wild boar meat that Makoto had roasted for her, Uchiha Zan pondered for a moment. It seemed that the third generation was not ready to attack her now. Without a falling out, returning to Konoha was definitely the best choice. Let's clean up the Rain Shinobi Village in the end, solve the problem of Konoha shinobi killing people and stealing food, and let them return to Konoha in batches, and then we can go back. Quote. Uchiha Zan then proposed his own idea. After the victory, Rain Shinobi Village, as the defeated village, could be said to have no power to fight back. Many Konoha shinobi rushed into the village to burn, kill and loot, which was already a common occurrence. After all, the two sides were warring enemies, and it was reasonable to let the ninjas of their own side indulge their desires. Even if Tsunade and the others wanted to curb it, it was impossible to take care of so many Konoha shinobi. Uchiha Zan didn't really want to rectify anything, but he wanted to use this as an excuse to search Rain Shinobi Village again. Nagato and Konan, they were the targets that Uchiha Zan wanted to find in advance. Chapter 31. Nagato was implanted with Rinnegan by Uchiha Madara, so Uchiha Zan must find him in advance. Not to mention attacking him immediately, but he can mark him in advance. When Uchiha Madara dies, he may be able to sit back and enjoy the fruits of his labor and absorb a wave of Rinnegan's eye power. In Uchiha Zan's plan, obtaining Rinnegan's eye power is a possibility for him to be promoted to Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, or even Rinnegan. After all, they are the eyes of superiors, and the eye power of Rinnegan should be able to allow him to be promoted. If it really doesn't work, Uchiha Zan can only think of another way. Anyway, relying on the ability of his right eye reincarnation sacrifice, he can be regarded as a pseudo-eternal Mangekyo as long as he uses it appropriately. As for the latter Konan to be found, it is purely out of personal interest. Is it wrong to like little Loli? And she will be so beautiful in the future, wouldn't it be wonderful to take her away now and raise her well trained? Since they already have Uzumaki Kanako at home, Uchiha Zan doesn't mind having another Konan. Tsunade and Uchiha Makoto, who don't understand Uchiha Zan's true intentions, think that Uchiha Zan is really kind-hearted. Even Jiraiya was moved and admired Uchiha Zan, who was so much younger than him. He was already sympathetic to the current situation of Rain Shinobi Village, so he was ready to stay here and do his part. Then I'll go to Rain Shinobi Village to take a look. Teacher Tsunade, Makoto, you go to the camp to pack up your things. Okay, Makoto and I will pack up first. Tsunade nodded, and then took Uchiha Makoto away first. At this time, Uchiha Makoto already had a diamond mark on his forehead that was exactly the same as Tsunade's. After practicing for a month, Uchiha Makoto also learned the 100 Healings mark. In the past month, Uchiha Zan has focused more on the development of dust release and collecting Jiraiya and Orochimaru's summoning scrolls. In line with Tsunade's lobbying, when he said he wanted to try to pick a summoning beast, Jiraiya and Orochimaru did not refuse. Providing a summoning scroll is not a problem, the main problem is whether Uchiha Zan can be chosen by the other party. High-level summoning beasts like Ryuchi Cave, Mount Myoboku, and Wet Bone Forest are already their choice of ninjas. Uchiha Zan's behavior of casting a wide net to catch more fish can be said to be excusable from their perspective. However, Jiraiya and Orochimaru did not expect that Uchiha Zan did not care about the so-called summoning beasts, he just wanted to learn the corresponding Sage mode from them. Let's go back and learn from Tsunade's Katsuyu Sage first, and then try the other two. Tsunade can speak well for him, but Mount Myoboku and Ryuchi Cave can only rely on himself. Uchiha Zan doesn't want to use force to negotiate, after all, who knows what level the strength of the ancestors behind them is. Each of them has lived for thousands of years, and they are old monsters in the literal sense. Uchiha Zan doesn't mind overestimating their strength as much as possible, at least he has to estimate it to be Super Cage level. With a heavy heart, Uchiha Zan once again stepped into the land of Rain Shinobi Village. Due to the geographical environment here, it really rains 8 out of 10 days, and today is a drizzly and hazy weather. No wonder Hanzo of the Salamander deliberately provoked a war and tried to expand the territory of the Rain country. In such an environment, if it is not changed, it will be difficult to develop basic people's livelihood. After all, the entire ninja world is now at a semi-modern level, which is really an abstract situation. There are sofas, TVs, and radios, but a group of people are still farming. If one day I can hold the entire ninja world in my hands, I must initiate reforms. At least get me a mobile phone and a computer, otherwise there will be no fun except clapping with my wife. Uchiha Zan muttered and began to search the entire Rain Shinobi Village. The previous war caused almost all the men in Rain Shinobi Village to die. At a glance, the scattered people on the street were all women, and they were all little girls. The fundamental reason why he couldn't find it after searching for almost half a month was because there were too many girls like Konan at this time. When Uchiha Zan appeared, the groups of little loli immediately became excited. They gathered in groups, looking at him with expectation and admiration. Okay, everyone line up, everyone has food. When he came to a shop of a rich businessman in Rain Shinobi Village, Uchiha-zan opened the door and took out the rice porridge and side dishes prepared by the rich businessman inside. He often does disaster relief these days, and his reputation in Rain Shinobi Village belongs to God. If there is no money to build a statue for him, any poor family who is about to starve to death would want to build one for him and worship him every day. As for where the food comes from, on the one hand, he obtained it by controlling the rich businessmen with hypnosis, and on the other hand, he obtained it by ripening rice with wood style. Accompanied by some cured meat made from wild animals he hunted, and pickles provided by the rich businessmen. For this group of little Lolita, these foods are necessary to maintain life every day. Most importantly, the food distributed by Lord Uchiha-zan, the wandering ninjas of Rain Shinobi Village and the ninjas of Konoha dare not rob. In today's Rain Shinobi Village, food is life. Lord Zan, there is me. Me. The little Lolita were crowded, all eager to fill their stomachs. However, they had been taught by Uchiha-zan before, so everyone restrained their desires and lined up obediently. While distributing food, Uchiha-zan had a new idea in his mind. I might as well secretly support a leader of Rain Shinobi Village and use this to secretly control the entire Rain Shinobi Village. After all, he couldn't stay here all the time. It was hard to say what would happen to these little Lolita girls after he left. Uchiha-zan couldn't do this to satisfy his kindness and ignore them. Considering the special strategic position of Rain Shinobi Village at the junction of various countries, controlling this obscure ninja village in advance is also a strategic layout. And for him, this is not a difficult task. Mangekyo Sharingan's powerful hypnosis ability, even if cage level is accidentally hit, it is difficult to break free from his control. In the current Rain Shinobi Village, let alone cage level, Chunin is considered a strong man here. After adding another thing to do before leaving, Uchiha-zan slowly distributed all the food. When he closed his shop and prepared to continue searching near Rain Shinobi Village, a girl in ragged clothes and alert eyes with light blue and purple secretly poked her head out from the corner. Seeing Uchiha-zan was about to leave, she finally plucked up the courage. She stepped on the muddy ground and walked to Uchiha-zan step by step. Raising her round face stained with stains, like a little beggar, the girl whispered, Is there any food? I just want a little bit. She spoke more and more quietly, and she lowered her head humbly in the face of Uchiha-zan's gaze. You want to eat, right? Then be confident and look up at me. Looking at the little girl in front of him, Uchiha-zan smiled and reached out to gently touch her purple-blue hair stained with dust. Hearing his gentle voice, the panic in the girl's heart gradually subsided. She raised her head carefully, and when she saw Uchiha-zan's smiling face, she subconsciously lowered it. After finding that she was not beaten, she gently raised her head again. The bright orange eyes immediately met Uchiha-zan's pupils. This is good, hiding next to you and waiting until now, be bold, it's okay. I can heat up the rest and eat it, you come in and wash and change clothes first. Uchiha-zan stopped closing the shop, reopened the door, and welcomed the girl in. Feeling the kindness and warmth that she had never felt since her parents died, the 6-year-old girl couldn't help but shed tears in her eyes. Well, thank you. Actually, you don't have to bother me so much. I just need some food. The girl's voice was particularly low due to her inferiority and sensitivity. How could Uchiha-zan, who had finally found her target, let Konan leave so easily? Don't force yourself. My name is Uchiha-zan. I'm only 12 years old this year. I'm just a little taller. Uchiha-zan introduced himself with a smile, and emphasized his age. Konan's orange eyes widened when he heard that the handsome boy in front of him was only 12 years old, only 6 years older than himself. 12 years old. Why are the adults in the village not as tall as you? Well, it may be that I grow faster because I have enough nutrition. Uchiha-zan used words that were hard to tell whether they were true or false to evade Konan in front of him. The reason why he could have such a physique was that he absorbed the vitality and chakra from transformation which strengthened his physique in the past 2 years. The life return, after the completion of the 6 styles, also allowed his body to grow further. If he simply ate and drank well, he would not be qualified to grow into his almost adult appearance at this age. Hearing this, Konan couldn't help but look down at her shriveled and petite body. But before she could feel sad for a moment, Uchiha-san pulled her into the store. There was an independent house behind it. Except for the servants cleaning at the specified time, there was no one usually. I'll heat 2 buckets of water for you. There are also clothes in the house for you to pick 2 pieces. Uchiha-san did not give Konan a chance to refuse and immediately arranged a one-stop service for her. After he revealed his age before and the 2 sides got closer, Konan was less wary of adults in her heart. She did not refuse Uchiha-san's kindness again, and accepted it obediently. Konan, who washed her body in the bathtub, revealed a tender but delicate and cute face, which was obviously a beauty. The delicate skin that was previously covered by dirt and dust also showed its original white color. The only problem was that Konan was malnourished, her figure was too slender, and her face was unhealthy and pale. Konan, who changed into new clothes for the first time since her parents died, walked to the dining table with light and graceful steps. Looking at the hot food, she couldn't help swallowing her saliva. Noticing Uchiha-san looking at her with a smile, Konan's cheeks blushed slightly and she lowered her head shyly. After all, she had been traveling for a while, and her thinking was much more mature at the age of 6. She knew that there were differences between men and women, but this was the first time she was stared at by the opposite gender like this. But facing the handsome Uchiha-san, she let down her guard and no longer had the fear she had before. Although she was shy, she felt an indescribable joy. Looking at Konan in front of her, Uchiha-san seemed to see a shy little rabbit, making people want to hug him. Gurgle gurgle. At this time, Konan's stomach, smelling the long-lost aroma of food, instinctively made a gurgling sound. After this sound, the shame made Konan's head hang even lower. The red face also became hot, and the small pink earlobes were also red, making people want to take a bite. Ha ha ha, don't bear it if you are hungry, remember to eat slowly. Uchiha-san spoke first, breaking the awkward atmosphere and asking Konan to come up and sit down to enjoy. Unable to refuse, Konan sat on the bench and ate in small bites. Later, when she ate too fast, Uchiha-san would ask her to slow down. After not eating for too long, eating too much suddenly is not good for the stomach. Knowing that Uchiha-san was concerned about Konan, she also kept these things in mind. During the meal, facing Uchiha-san's question, Konan opened her heart and no longer concealed. She answered her current situation truthfully and told her previous experience. Brother Uchiha-san, my name is Konan. My parents were called to the front line a year ago and should have died. When Konan mentioned her parents, tears could not be concealed in her eyes. Uchiha-san checked the time and estimated that he should not have killed them. As for Konan's later experience, how could she, a 6-year-old girl, keep her home? Hanzo of the Salamander was doing his utmost to exploit the people and ninjas of Rain Shinobi Village for the war. Konan's parents' house was soon robbed. As for the news of whether his parents were dead or not, no one on the front line conveyed it to Konan. There was not even a pension, which made Konan start wandering in Rain Shinobi Village. Usually she would hide in the cave outside Rain Shinobi Village, and come to Rain Shinobi Village to steal some food during the day. After wandering for a long time, Konan had seen many dark sides of society. Therefore, she would deliberately avoid people, especially men. Fortunately, she was only 6 years old, and no one would have any ill will towards her because she was usually sloppy and small. It was just that after the recent defeat of Rain Shinobi Village, there was even less food in the village. Konan, who had been hungry for 3 days, had no choice but to come and see after hearing that food was being distributed here. Konan, who had been prepared to return empty-handed, really didn't expect to meet such a kind person as Uchiha-san. Not only was he so handsome, but he was also so kind and considerate to her. The key point was that if Uchiha-san had any ill intentions, Konan herself didn't believe it. After all, she was already like this, how could there be anything worth the other party's plan? After listening to Konan's experience, Uchiha-san did not hide his origins. After hearing that he was from Konoha, Konan was not afraid, but showed a look of surprise and admiration. Are you the legendary Konoha Thunder God? Ah, don't call me that, it's embarrassing. When such a cute little loli like Konan said such a title, Uchiha-san screamed with shame in his heart. Seeing Uchiha-san like this, Konan couldn't help but laugh. He, I feel that Uchiha-san, you are different from the rumors. Of course, those are all rumors. Uchiha-san waved his hand and calmed down at the same time. He raised his eyebrows slightly and asked back, I am from Konoha, Konan, aren't you afraid? Hearing Uchiha-san mention this, Konan thought for a while and finally shook his head. Because I think you are not a bad person, and we started this war first. Konan, who lives in this chaotic world, can't be unaware of what happened. If she wants to hate, Konan actually hates Hanzo of the Salamander who took the initiative to provoke the war. Her parents probably died on the battlefield where they fought against the Iron Country. Therefore, knowing that Uchiha-san in front of her is the Konoha Thunder God, who killed Hanzo of the Salamander, Konan also felt a sense of gratitude in her heart. Looking at Konan who was so sensible, Uchiha-san was also quite emotional. To be able to think independently at this age, she must have experienced a lot of hardships. After eating and drinking, Konan looked at Uchiha-san in front of her and was restless. She immediately stood up, bowed her head and thanked him. Thank you, big brother, for letting me have a good meal. I won't bother you here anymore. Konan, seeing that she was about to leave, Uchiha-san suddenly called her. Hearing Uchiha-san calling her, Konan immediately tensed up and stopped. Konan, you stay here for a while. If you go back, you have nowhere to go, right? But this will be too much trouble for you, big brother. Looking at this house, Konan bit her pink lips lightly, with deep nostalgia in her eyes. It's impossible to say that she doesn't want to stay. Her cold, simple cave is completely incomparable to this warm, comfortable, and not damp house now. Uchiha-san saw Konan's concerns and said with a smile, I will stay here for a few days. It's tiring to distribute food by myself. Konan, you can help me, right? And right now, I want you to help me with something. After hearing the last part, Konan couldn't wait to ask, what is it? If she could help Uchiha-san and stay here, she would feel relieved. I'm looking for someone recently. It's a boy with red hair. Konan, you should have been around here for a long time. Have you seen such a child? Uchiha-san briefly described Nagato's appearance. As a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, it goes without saying that he has red hair. Uchiha Madara chose to put his Rinnegan on Nagato because he saw the physique of Nagato's Uzumaki clan. After listening to Uchiha-san's description, Konan fell into deep thought. She thought of the people she had met, and she had never met a boy with red hair. I have never seen such a child, but I know where they might appear. There are often children stealing things on the long street west of the village. I used to go to the forest a few hundred meters east of the village. There are many children gathering there. Konan listed the places where two stray children often appear. This gave Uchiha-san a great help. He had been checking step by step before, and it was easy to miss them. Then Konan, you should have a good sleep here first, I will go to those two places to check. After Uchiha-san gave a few instructions, he immediately set off according to the information given by Konan. Looking at Uchiha-san who was leaving, Konan didn't know what he was going to do, but she was relieved that she could help him. He is only 6 years older than me, but he takes care of me like this. Konan had a peaceful smile on her face, and her heart was particularly warm. When she lived in the cold cave, she prayed to the gods more than once, hoping that she could return to normal life. But she didn't expect that such a day would actually come. Although Uchiha-san said that he helped him just now, Konan felt that she didn't provide any help. Her eyes couldn't help but fall on the few pieces of white paper placed casually on the wooden table next to her. For some reason, she has been particularly fond of origami since she can remember. Therefore, even though she is only 6 years old, her origami skills are among the best. Her hands couldn't help but put on those pieces of white paper. After more than a year, she can touch the paper again. Even after a long time, Konan still folded the paper skillfully. After a while, looking at the rabbit, paper crane, and butterfly she folded in her hand, an idea came to her mind. Will my big brother like these origami if I give them to him? Konan's face flushed, and her expression became nervous. Even lying on the soft bed, she was still lost in her reverie with the small animals she had just folded. When Konan was daydreaming and thinking about something, Uchiha-san came to the long street west of Rain Shinobi village. This is not the most prosperous long street in Rain Shinobi Village. It looks very deserted due to the war. There are not many vendors on the street, most of them sell food. Seeing the appearance of Uchiha Zan, the vendors showed a nervous look, fearing that some wandering ninja or Konoha shinobi would come to destroy and rob the food. But after seeing Uchiha Zan's face clearly, they all breathed a sigh of relief. In Rain Shinobi Village, Uchiha Zan's reputation has spread, and they all know that he will not do anything to them. Uchiha Zan didn't bother to pay attention to these merchants, and unfolded Kagura Hard Eye Hard Net and began to search for Nagato's traces. Unfortunately, he didn't know Nagato's chakra. At present, the biggest help of Kagura Hard Eye is just to make it easier for him to find people. Many children hiding in the corners of the alleys were found by Uchiha Zan one by one. After searching everywhere, Uchiha Zan did not find Nagato's figure. Where is this guy hiding? Could it be that Nagato's parents are not dead now, and he is not wandering? Uchiha Zan carefully recalled the settings about Nagato in his mind. During the Second Ninja World War, two Jonin of Konohagakure broke into Nagato's house in order to search for food resources, and mistakenly thought that Nagato's parents were enemies and killed his parents. The frightened Nagato unconsciously activated the Rinnegan and killed the invader. Nagato, who lost his parents, lived a wandering life from then on. It's so abstract. Although the ninjas of Konoha would plunder food, how could the Jonin level plunder? Generally, it is genin and chunin who are not of high quality and have insufficient food rations, so they may plunder money or food. Jonin are the elites of the village, and they will never starve. Recalling it again, Uchiha Zan just felt a headache. There are really many problems here, and Uchiha Zan, who knows the current situation, has a lot of complaints. Of course, there is another possibility, that is, the Konoha Jonin who killed Nagato's parents were controlled and arranged by Uchiha Madara. If so, everything is smooth. Uchiha Zan stopped and continued to recall. He was going to try his luck in the forest outside the village. If he really couldn't find it, then forget it. Later, it all depended on Jiraiya to see if he could meet Nagato. After all, Hanzo of the Salamander was dead now that he was involved. Tsunade also complained to herself that a sissy fool wanted to pursue her and was kicked half to death by her. The plot in the original book was different, and Uchiha Zan didn't know what changes would happen in the future. That's why he always chose to take the initiative instead of passively waiting for the development of events. But now it seems that there is really no way. It was enough for him to get Konan on this trip. Konan can awaken Paper Escape in the future. If she is used as a reference, the subsequent construction of Paper Escape can save a lot of eye power. Even if there is a corresponding cognition, the deduction out of nothing will consume a huge amount of eye power. If he had a foundation in advance, he could even be on the verge of learning it. Uchiha Zan had tried it before, and if he learned it through reincarnation portrait, the amount of pupil power consumed would be reduced exponentially. Like the lightning-style Kilin he had learned before, he could build it with almost no pupil power because he had the foundation of lightning-style Chidori. After comforting himself, Uchiha Zan set off to the forest east of the village. This place is very remote, but you can see a lot of campfire remains along the way. Children with pale faces and skinny bodies all hunt, drink water, and live in this forest. I didn't realize before that there is a camp for homeless children here. Uchiha Zan, with a slightly raised eyebrow, hid in the tree canopy and scanned the children moving below. After a round of inspection, Uchiha Zan did not find any trace of Nagato. However, during the search, he captured a tiny amount of chakra in the forest. Any human in this world has a trace amount of chakra in their body. But the trace I just caught was so tiny that it was even weaker than that of an ordinary person on the verge of death. It's so tiny that sometimes I can't even catch it. It must be caused by someone hiding their own chakra. Uchiha Zan narrowed his eyes slightly and quickly realized the problem. He himself restrained his chakra and did not go there in person. Uchiha Zan had a guess in his mind, that is, Z used the mayfly technique nearby. Whether it is white Zetsu or black Zetsu, their appearance must be extraordinary. Magnet-style third eye. Uchiha Zan condensed the iron sand and accurately controlled every trace of chakra. After hiding the chakra fluctuations to almost non-existence, he controlled the iron sand eye to fly towards the target location. A few minutes later, on the road deep in the mountains, Uchiha Zan caught the chakra fluctuations hidden under the earth. If it weren't for the powerful perception of Kagura's hard net, his iron sand eye would not be able to detect any trace of the other party's existence. On the road deep in the mountains, Uchiha Zan soon saw a red-haired child walking on the road. He walked unsteadily, and his pale face and thin body showed that he was malnourished and had not eaten for a long time. Nagato. Uchiha Zan recognized it at a glance. This was the Nagato he was looking for. Good boy, you are hiding in the deep mountains and forests, right? No wonder I have been looking for you in Rain Shinobi Village for so many days, but I can't find any trace of you. When Uchiha Zan was complaining in his heart, Nagato, who was walking on the road, fell forward directly. Plop! Nagato fell straight down, face down on the ground. It is not difficult to see from his condition that Nagato probably fainted from hunger. Seeing Nagato faint from hunger, a strange-looking humanoid creature with unnaturally white skin immediately emerged from the ground. White Zetsu popped up, muttering, "Oh my, you can't die here, otherwise Madara-sama's plan can't be implemented." White Zetsu stabbed his palm into Nagato's body and delivered some nutrients to him. After noticing someone approaching, White Zetsu hid in the ground again. The grass next to him made a rustling sound, and soon a little boy with an orange hedgehog head popped up. I wonder if the trap here has caught prey. Why is someone lying here? The little boy muttered expectantly, and immediately approached Nagato who was lying on the lawn. Yahiko, who had been hanging around here for a while and had become the leader of the children in this area, immediately determined that Nagato was fainted from hunger. He took out the water and food he brought with him, gently broke off some and fed it to the unconscious Nagato. Because White Zetsu had previously delivered nutrients and Yahiko had fed him some food, Nagato, who had a strong vitality, quickly woke up. As soon as Nagato opened his eyes, he saw Yahiko, who was smiling brightly. "Hey, hello, I'm Yahiko, are you okay? What's your name? I haven't seen you before." Yahiko pulled Nagato up and greeted him enthusiastically. Uchiha Zan, who saw this, smelled the smell of gay love from a distance. "The way you met, how come the male protagonist picked up a girl on the side of the road while walking?" Uchiha Zan, who didn't dare to think about it anymore, just hastily separated a few grains of sand iron and attached them to the roots of Yahiko's hair. This can only be regarded as a semi-finished, iron sand mark, which is limited to providing a coordinate for himself. As for why he didn't put it on Nagato, Uchiha Zan was afraid that this kid would find out in the future. Nagato must not be touched now. White Zetsu is always monitoring him, which means that Uchiha Madara is very concerned about him. Uchiha Zan doesn't want to take this risk and go to dig Rinnegan now. There is a long time to come, and Yahiko can also be used. Seeing the two of them full of gay love, Uchiha Zan dare not imagine what the future will be like. Nagato's future strength is uncertain, but Yahiko is definitely not good. If there is really a problem, he can definitely threaten Nagato to hand over Rinnegan with Yahiko. Satisfied, Uchiha Zan turned around and left. He did not go back to Rain Shinobi Village directly, but went to the Konoha camp to meet Tsunade and Makoto first. Uchiha Zan did not hide the existence of Konan. It is reasonable for him to adopt him. Makoto believed this, but Tsunade didn't believe him at all. There are so many war orphans in Rain Shinobi Village, why did you choose one to adopt? No, I have to go see him. Tsunade had reason to suspect that Uchiha Zan had a different purpose. Uzumaki Kanako was almost being raised as a young wife by Uchiha Zan, and Uzumaki Kushina usually visited Uchiha Zan's home every day. She knew this very well, so she seriously suspected that Uchiha Zan had ulterior motives. Uchiha Zan didn't expect that Tsunade could see through his mind at once. What happened to the big-breasted girl who had no brains? Could it be that the protein he had contributed to her before had nourished her brain? Uchiha Zan, who was suspicious, could only lead the two to meet Konan. After leading Tsunade and Makoto to the base he had set up in Rain Shinobi Village, Uchiha Zan went in first. He wanted to give Konan a heads up so that she could be mentally prepared. Uchiha Zan also explained Konan's situation to Tsunade and Makoto. Makoto didn't need to say much when she heard that Konan's parents had both passed away and that he had been wandering for more than a year begging for food before being met by Uchiha Zan. Even Tsunade's heart softened. Although it had nothing to do with the war between Rain Shinobi Village and Konoha, Tsunade still put himself in it. Thinking that this was the result, caused by himself, the guilt in his heart made Tsunade feel uneasy. Uchiha Zan took this opportunity to return to the depths of the mansion. Soon he saw Konan sleeping soundly, with her thin clothes sticking to her pink skin. She had a sweet smile on her face, as if she had dreamed of something happy. Even in her sleep, Konan was still holding 1,000 paper cranes carefully in her hands. On the wooden table next to the bed, Uchiha Zan also saw other origami works. What a beautiful craft, I can only fold a paper airplane. Uchiha Zan picked up the origami animal on the table and looked at it for a while. In his worldview, he could only fold it in half, and then there was nothing else. It was impossible for him to fold such a vivid little animal with paper before. It seemed that Konan was alerted by living in the wild. After hearing Uchiha Zan's sigh, she woke up. She subconsciously tensed her nerves and immediately opened her eyes to look around. Uchiha Zan noticed that she woke up, holding the origami animal in his hand and said with a smile, "Sorry to bother you, Konan, this is what you folded, it's very beautiful." Looking at the smiling Uchiha Zan in front of her, Konan was stunned for a few seconds. It turns out it's not a dream. She even suspected that she was sleeping in a cold cave. I didn't expect that everything I experienced today was not a dream. Hearing Konan's murmur, Uchiha Zan smiled and stretched out his finger to touch her forehead. "You are so sleepy, of course it's not a dream, I am standing well. Although I disturb you, but Konan, you should get up. I have 2 companions to introduce to you, they also want to see you." Uchiha Zan pinched Konan's face and immediately gave her a shot of prevention. Konan, who had just reacted, sat up subconsciously when she heard that Uchiha Zan's companions were coming. Seeing her so formal, Uchiha Zan said softly, "Don't be too nervous, they are all very good people." After putting down the origami animals in his hand, Uchiha Zan went out to pull Tsunade and Makoto in. Konan, who was still a little unconscious, couldn't help but look at the origami animals placed on the table. She just remembered that Uchiha Zan seemed to say that this was very beautiful just now. At this moment, a different kind of satisfaction filled the girl's heart. After a while, Uchiha Zan appeared at the door of the room with Tsunade and Makoto. Seeing 2 strange women, Konan was quite nervous. And seeing such a small girl, Tsunade and Makoto were both full of maternal love. Even though she could see that Konan was a beauty, Tsunade no longer mentioned Uchiha Zan's possible intentions. Uchiha Zan also gave space to the 3 of them and did not interfere. Who knows what chemical reaction will occur when these girls and women of different ages, 6, 12 and 20, are mixed together. He doesn't want to take risks, otherwise it will become a sheer field for no reason. "Aha, I'm in a good mood today, so I'll kill 2 ninjas before dark to replenish my vitality." After returning to Konoha, he has to be quiet for a while, and Uchiha Zan is not going to waste time now. There are not many powerful ninjas left in Rain Shinobi Village. Uchiha Zan is not picky, as long as he catches genin and chunin who commit crimes, he will kill them all. The continuous rain will eventually help him wash away these bloody traces. When Uchiha Zan came back, Konan, Tsunade, Makoto and others were no longer unfamiliar at the beginning. The 4 stayed in Rain Shinobi Village for 3 days. During these 3 days, Uchiha Zan controlled the wealthy merchants and the remaining jonin in Rain Shinobi Village, as well as the daimyo of the Rain country. Anyway, he really didn't know why these ninja guys were so obedient to a pig, who only knew how to eat, drink, defecate and urinate, and didn't even think of resisting. Uchiha Zan didn't spoil the daimyo. If he didn't need him now, he would have killed him long ago. Using the daimyo's influence, in conjunction with the wealthy businessmen and ninjas controlled by Uchiha Zan in Rain Shinobi Village with illusions, they quickly formed a new force to dominate Rain Shinobi Village. A puppet jonin arranged by Uchiha Zan became the new leader of Rain Shinobi Village under recommendation. Other ninja villages didn't care, and Konoha didn't even care. Anyway, the compensation of the rain country was in place, and no one wanted to touch the land of the rain country. After all, its location was too special. It was located in the center of the borders of various countries, which was the same as a wave without any waves. If anyone dared to occupy it, other ninja villages would definitely not agree. Therefore, no one knew that the land of the rain country had quietly fallen into the hands of Uchiha Zan. Uchiha Zan, who returned to Konoha, did not need to worry. What he was more worried about now was meeting the girls at home. Knowing that he was coming back, Uzumaki Kanako and Uzumaki Kushina came to his house and waited. As soon as Uchiha Zan stepped into the house, two red-haired beauties jumped out. "Welcome back, young master Zan." Uzumaki Kanako was wearing a little maid outfit specially made by Uchiha Zan. Her gentle voice and respectful bowing were quite cute. Uzumaki Kushina was not so polite. She jumped into Uchiha Zan's arms and gave him a big hug. She was wearing a light yellow shirt, and the soft fabric outlined her petite figure. Because she hugged him tightly, Uchiha Zan could feel the softness of her body. And Kushina also exuded a fresh and lovely breath. The innocent smile that came into view made this petite figure have a little bit of coquettishness. "Hey, you hit me hard, Kushina." Uchiha Zan rubbed Kushina's red hair and responded with a smile. Kushina raised her round face when she heard this. "Humph, I'm much stronger now, don't underestimate me." Yes, my Kushina is the best." Looking at the cute and lovely Kushina in front of her, Uchiha Zan agreed. Even though Uchiha Zan's response was like coaxing a child, Kushina couldn't help but smile with joy after hearing it. Facing such a coaxing Kushina, Uchiha Zan doted on her round face. "I'm afraid I can only feel this soft touch in other places in the future. While Kushina is young, I must enjoy it for a while." After enjoying the fragrant and soft Kushina, Uchiha Zan introduced Konan, who would live here in the future. Konan, dressed in formal clothes, walked out from behind him and bowed respectfully to Kanako and Kushina, saying, "Hello, sisters, I am Konan, please give me more advice in the future." "Hey, what a cute girl," Kushina exclaimed in surprise, and then went up to hug Konan, who was smaller than her. Uzumaki Kanako narrowed her eyes slightly, with a look of scrutiny in her eyes. What's going on? She feels that her status has been severely challenged. During this period of time, she has been at home, studying some fine readings, and knowing a lot about adult topics. Tsunade can't compare, and those two big thunders are the threshold she can't cross. Her young age is her advantage, but the appearance of Konan has replaced her position as the youngest sister. Uchiha Zan noticed the change in Uzumaki Kanako's mood and prepared to go back and comfort her. "They are all younger than me, yet they dare to be jealous. This kind of trend must be stopped." In order to divert attention, Uchiha Zan shouted, "We have to celebrate this time. Tsunade will treat us to barbecue and seafood later. Let's pack up and go." "Great." Uzumaki Kushina jumped up immediately. Konan, who was being rubbed, couldn't help but drool. She had only heard of these foods so far. Kanako's attention was also diverted, and she immediately took the initiative to lead Uchiha Zan to change clothes in the house. She has learned the maid rules in the past 2 years, and she has also learned them well. It seems that she was stimulated by Konan just now, and Kanako's service to dress is also particularly attractive. "The maid outfit I made for her, you can see her white skin when you look down." Fortunately, Kanako only wears it at home, and she changed into normal clothes later. The only pity is that she hasn't grown up yet, and doesn't have the more direct charm and mature impact of Tsunade. But Uchiha Zan doesn't dislike the faint fragrance of this immature fruit. If Kushina and Konan weren't waiting outside, Uchiha Zan would probably have to spend a long time tasting the flesh of this fruit to see if it's edible. But thinking of the main meal today, Uchiha Zan suppressed this impulse. Uchiha Zan put on his usual casual clothes and then took Kanako's hand and left the bedroom. "Okay, let's go." Uchiha Zan gave an order, and everyone set off in a mighty manner. At the door of Konoha's largest barbecue restaurant, Makoto and Tsunade, who were dressed neatly, were already waiting. Makoto put on a touch of light makeup, and her already delicate and cute appearance looked more mature and beautiful, and the clothes on her body also set off this point very well. The slightly raised body curves made her immature with a touch of charming and mature charm. Tsunade's outfit was the simplest, wearing a tea-green long gown with black edges, a loose sleeveless top similar to a kimono, a black cloth belt around the waist, and dark blue cropped pants. But even such a loose style was supported by her plump and proud figure. Her charming face between youth and charm, coupled with the diamond-shaped 100 healings mark between her eyebrows, made her more elegant and charming. Her plump curves showed her charm just right, and her elegant and generous demeanor suppressed her overly attractive figure very well. In the eyes of outsiders, she was more of a kind of majesty, not as irresistible temptation as in the eyes of Uchiha Zan. The first time she saw Uchiha Zan, Tsunade noticed his burning gaze. Her mind was full of thoughts, a charming blush climbed up her cheeks, and she hugged her hands as if trying to hide something. However, the tightness of her hands made the deep ravines more obvious. The milky white snow-white pupils that were about to burst out attracted Uchiha Zan's attention like a magnet. Before anyone noticed, Tsunade took the initiative to let everyone enter the store and go to a private room she had reserved. Tsunade, who was walking at the end, gave Uchiha Zan a charming look. "If your girlfriend sees us, she will be angry." "I don't think so. Makoto is quite magnanimous, and it's really hard for me to look away from you," Uchiha Zan responded with a smile, without any stage fright. Seeing Uchiha Zan's stubborn look, Tsunade was speechless because of his thick skin. Before entering, Uchiha Zan gently patted her hips and reminded her, "Don't forget your promise to be so bold. I have been accumulating it for a long time since I came back from the battlefield." After saying that, without giving Tsunade a chance to answer, Uchiha Zan followed everyone into the private room. Tsunade, who was at the back, stroked her red and hot cheeks and couldn't help mumbling a few times. "You still remember that? At your age, he's really good. It's totally inconsistent with human biology. If that's the case, wouldn't I be committing a crime?" Countless thoughts flashed through Tsunade's mind. As soon as the last thought came to mind, Tsunade was so embarrassed that he almost slapped himself. If it's a crime, it seems that he has already committed a crime. With a broken jaw and broken mood, Tsunade stepped into the box with excitement and expectation. The independent box space is relatively closed, and the atmosphere soon became warm. Tsunade also ordered some low-proof fruit wine for everyone to try. As for Konan, he just drank juice and ate vegetables obediently, and it was enough for everyone to be a cute thing. It was already evening when everyone came together, and it was completely dark after a few people finished eating. "Makoto, go back with Konan, Kanako and the others first, I'll clean up the mess." Seeing that it was getting late, Uchiha Zan took the initiative to end the party. Makoto and the others, who were full, also felt a little tired. After all, except for Tsunade, the others were young, and it was normal for them to sleep at this time. "Well, I'll take them back first, Schwanjin." After nodding, Makoto didn't think much about it, and left with Konan and Kanako. Uchiha Zan sent Kushina back to the Senju clan's residence, and she now lives with Uzumaki Mito. At the end, he and Tsunade were the only ones left on the dim street. Tsunade seemed to be drunk, and was held in Uchiha Zan's arms. She closed her eyes slightly, and her slightly trembling eyes showed that she was not really drunk. Sniffing the mellow and milky aroma of the fruit wine left on the beauty beside him, Uchiha Zan's palm could not help but explore inside, brushing over the hard-moving outline, and finally resting on the soft waist. "Since you are drunk, I will personally take you back," Uchiha Zan whispered in her ear and gently bit her rosy earlobe. Tsunade made a whimpering sound, but still did not open her eyes. When Uchiha Zan really took her back to the house, Tsunade had to open her eyes. Without giving her a chance to speak, Uchiha Zan kissed her lips. I don't know if it was the sweetness of the fruit wine, or whether both of them were greedy for this beauty, Tsunade just felt that this kiss was particularly long. Her eyes became blurred, and her slightly drunk expression changed from the initial reluctance to complete obedience. "Stinky brat. What stinky brat? Call me husband." After using practical actions to change Tsunade's address from snotty brat to husband, and then good father, Uchiha Zan felt a full sense of accomplishment. He almost lost several times in the middle, but fortunately he had been exercising his body over the years and finally managed to hold on and win. "You have 100 healings mark and I have it too. I also have life return." Tsunade, you haven't practiced the 6 styles up to standard. Snap. Looking at the dim window, Uchiha Zan slapped him skillfully. The crisp sound and the familiar pain woke Tsunade from his sleep. Tsunade, who had already adapted to this kind of pain, rolled his eyes at Uchiha Zan lazily. Don't call me Shaoshuan, I have already given up. Tsunade's weak voice was particularly charming, and Uchiha Zan felt numb all over when he heard it. That's more like it. Falling headlong into Tsunade's arms, Uchiha Zan no longer had the idea of showing off his strategic victory. He just wanted to have a good sleep and get back the sleep he missed last night. The two of them closed their eyes and opened them again, and that day passed. Dong, dong, dong. In the evening, the rapid knock on the door woke up Tsunade and Uchiha Zan, who were competing in the 6 styles again. Uchiha Zan woke up instantly when he sensed that the people outside were Makoto and the others. You are too addicted to it, and you should wake up soon. Uchiha Zan shook Tsunade beside her, who was still half asleep. Seeing Uchiha Zan calling her, her body instinctively hugged him and held him deeply in her arms. Be gentle. The soft and weak voice came out from Tsunade's red lips, causing Uchiha Zan to frown. I mean Makoto and the others came to see us. Well, then, Tsunade, who had reacted, suddenly opened her eyes. She immediately threw Uchiha Zan out of her arms and subconsciously grabbed the clothes she usually put on the table. This time, Tsunade was stunned for a moment, and then she looked down and saw that the jacket and top had been broken into pieces. You little brat, you've gone too far. Tsunade glared at Uchiha Zan fiercely and wanted to get up to get new clothes. But as soon as she stood up, her body fell down weakly. It was not until now that Tsunade reacted that she was red and purple, and her body had no strength to get up. Although she could use the 100 healings mark to recover quickly, it would take some time. Seeing this, Uchiha Zan directly pressed her on the bed and covered her with a wet quilt. Just keep pretending to sleep, I'll take care of them. Okay, then I'll do as you say. Tsunade, who had tucked her head and body into the quilt, nodded with a red face. In this situation, this is the only way to fool around. Wind-style great breakthrough. Uchiha Zan blew out a whirlwind from his mouth, refreshing the air in the room, changed his clothes and went to open the door. Showing a bright smile, Uchiha Zan immediately opened the door. Makoto and Kushina came into view. Seeing Uchiha Zan appear, Kushina boasted to Makoto with a smug look on his face. What do you think, Makoto? I told you Zan was here. Before, Makoto said that Uchiha Zan was missing, so I came to ask. Kushina immediately used the perception ability of Kagura's hard eye and quickly found this place. Makoto nodded slightly and asked curiously. Zan-jun, you haven't come back all night, why are you at teacher Tsunade's house? Ahem, I brought her back last night. Who knew she vomited, so I helped her clean up. After a busy night, I'm here to make up for my sleep today. Tsunade, that guy, is still drunk and still sleeping in the room. Uchiha Zan coughed twice and answered in a very natural tone. After hearing this, Makoto felt that something was wrong, but couldn't say it. Tsunade is her teacher after all, and Makoto couldn't think of anything deeper. Teacher Tsunade hasn't woken up yet, then I'll make a hangover soup for her to drink. Makoto, who cares about Tsunade, walked in immediately. I'll help you. Kushina followed closely and quickly followed. Uchiha Zan wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and took another look in the direction of the bedroom. Tsunade, who heard the noise, immediately pretended to be drunk and asleep. She felt touched, guilty, and slightly stimulated. Fortunately, the stimulation brought by the immorality did not make Tsunade lose her mind. She could not be said to be professional in acting, but she had no problem fooling Makoto and Kushina. After the matter was perfectly resolved, Uchiha Zan was relieved. Next time I come, I have to control the time. After a few days of sighing, Uchiha Zan had gotten used to coming to Tsunade every day. Tsunade's plump figure, which was nourished, grew a little bit, and Uchiha Zan was able to measure the actual weight gain. After gradually becoming the shape of Uchiha Zan, she also had a charming and seductive temperament. Even Makoto and others, who were also women, were occasionally amazed by Tsunade. Recently, they have a catchphrase that, Tsunade-sama, teacher, seems to have become more beautiful. Tsunade was so happy to hear this. If her body could not bear it, she would probably squeeze Uchiha Zan more. Uchiha Zan was also thankful more than once that he had been using lightning-style chakra mode to strengthen his body every day before, and he also had the amplification of soul transformation sacrifice. Otherwise, he would not be able to deal with Tsunade with a senju physique at his age. After a month of indulging in the gentle land, Uchiha Zan regained his spirit. I can't sleep anymore, Uchiha Zan, cheer up. What are you talking about? I specially wore the fishnet clothes you mentioned today. Tsunade's voice came from the house, and Uchiha Zan's mind rang with a ballad. Big head son, small head dad. After another day of depression, Uchiha Zan was completely excited. The most important thing is that he found that if he didn't cheer up, he would be weak. Tsunade, who is nearly 30 years old, is getting braver and braver. This pony can't stand it anymore. I'm going to the Wetbone Forest to practice Sage Mode. That's it for the time being. Bye. Uchiha Zan got up from the bed again, put on his pants quickly and asked Tsunade to summon Katsuyu to go to the Wetbone Forest. HMPH, you were working hard before, okay, I'll tell Makoto and the others. Tsunade lay on the bed, showing her perfect figure elegantly, her jade hands gently stroking her thighs, showing her seductive lines. The baby-like tender skin was faintly flushed, and she exuded fragrance charmingly. Looking at her every move, Uchiha Zan seemed to see a succubus trying to suck his essence dry. Fortunately, Tsunade was completely full now, and she didn't have that idea. She put on her coat and summoned Katsuyu out. Katsuyu, please, teach this kid a lesson. Tsunade had told Katsuyu in advance, and now he spoke for Uchiha Zan again. You guys are really amazing, you actually got mixed up. I won't get involved in the trivial matters of the combination of the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan. Speaking of the point, even Master Tsunade hasn't learned Sage Mode yet. Zan, are you confident? Katsuyu's mouth opened and closed, and a crisp female voice came out. That's right, this Katsuyu is female, or the entire Katsuyu is female. Each Katsuyu is a split body of Katsuyu, but Uchiha Zan is not sure whether their consciousness is common. Facing Katsuyu's question, Uchiha Zan nodded confidently. I have confidence. It would be a pity to give up without even trying. Haha, you have such a mentality at such a young age. Hashirama was not much worse than you. Katsuyu Immortal admired Uchiha Zan in front of him. Regardless of whether he could learn it or not, this kind of pride was necessary to become a strong man. Then Katsuyu Immortal took Uchiha Zan to the Wetbone Forest surrounded by green shade through reverse summoning. The greenery here was lush, and Uchiha Zan felt a lot more energetic in a breath. And what he saw was a dense mass of little Katsuyu. The tentacles of each Katsuyu were staring straight at this side, and the scene was quite weird. Uchiha Zan knew that these Katsuyu were actually clones of Katsuyu Immortal, and there was no emotion on his face. Then, Zan, I want to explain to you what Sage Mode is first. To learn Sage Mode, you must learn to integrate the natural energy of the outside world and integrate it with your own chakra to create a more powerful fairy chakra. Katsuyu in front of Uchiha Zan started to explain. Although he had the concept of Sage Mode in his mind, it did not prevent him from listening to Katsuyu's detailed explanation. The Sage Mode of our Wetbone Forest is different from the toads of Mount Myoboku and the white snakes of Ryuchi Cave. Depending on the different learning methods and the ratio of absorbed natural energy, Sage Mode is also different. The Sage Mode of the Wetbone Forest lineage tends to be Yang Escape, focusing more on vitality, and of course the destructive power is not weak. Katsuyu said complacently, and at the same time praised the Sage Mode of his own lineage. Then the little Katsuyu squirmed one by one, and soon filled Uchiha Zan's body. The soft and sticky touch made Uchiha Zan frown. Although there is no odor, it is physiologically repulsive to have Katsuyu crawling all over your body like this. However, he did not shake off the little Katsuyu on his body, but looked at the Katsuyu Immortal clone in front of him seriously. Seeing that Uchiha Zan remained calm, Katsuyu Immortal's tone was a little more approving. You have good patience, Shaoshuan. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. It's not easy for us in the Wetbone Forest to practice Sage Mode. These little Katsuyu will help you absorb natural energy, and if the natural energy gets out of control, they will also help to expel it. As long as you can learn to absorb natural energy within 3 days without your body being katsuyused, you will be qualified to learn Sage Mode. Katsuyu Immortal made his words very clear, and Uchiha Zan bowed to him respectfully. Thank you for your teaching, Katsuyu Immortal. Quote. After that, he sat cross-legged on the ground, entered a meditative state and began to try to absorb natural energy. Seeing that Uchiha Zan was quite polite, Katsuyu Sage had a better impression of him. Perhaps because the wet bone forest is a holy place, the natural energy here is also particularly rich. With the help of many little Katsuyu, Uchiha Zan quickly sensed the natural energy floating in the air. Violent and chaotic, that is the energy transformed from the vitality of this planet. The more he came into contact with natural energy, the more Chiazan could feel its vastness and terror. His mind flew to the sky, and he remembered that the Otsutsuki clan planted the sacred tree, which was to choose a planet with life. The nutrients that nourished the sacred tree and made it grow should be the vitality contained in the planet, that is, this natural energy. Uchiha Zan thought more and more, and his body absorbed the endless natural energy according to instinct. He did not absorb it according to his own ideas, but relied on his own instincts. Natural energy is different from his own chakra. Only by being calm and learning to feel it and merge with it can he master it. This was originally a very difficult process, but Uchiha Zan's progress was particularly smooth. Same as Hashirama back then, is it because of the Uchiha clan's bloodline? No, that's not right, the Uchiha clan inherited Six Paths' eyes, not his body. This vigorous vitality, it's the physique of the Uzumaki clan. Katsuyu looked at Uchiha Zan in surprise, and she quickly noticed something unusual. In addition to the Uchiha clan's bloodline, she also saw that Uchiha Zan had the top-level Uzumaki sage body, which only the members of the Uzumaki clan and the purest bloodline had. This is comparable to the sage body of the Senju clan, and it actually appeared on Uchiha Zan. Uchiha and Uzumaki. Could it be that Shaozan's bloodline has returned to his ancestors? Katsuyu, who knew the origins of these bloodlines, thought of a possibility. Everything in front of him proved that a possibility is reality. At this moment, the natural energy that was constantly integrated into Uchiha Zan's body gradually drew a black eye shadow mask on his face. 3 hours later, the Sage Mode eye shadow mask appeared completely on Uchiha Zan's face. The next moment, Uchiha Zan suddenly opened his eyes. The golden eyes exuded a kind of innate dignity and pressure. The strength of chakra has increased 3 times, whether it is ninjutsu or illusion, the power can be improved accordingly, and the most terrifying thing is the strengthening of vitality. Uchiha Zan was amazed, and without hesitation, he put his palm together as a blade and stabbed his abdomen. Puff! A hand knife pierced through his waist and abdomen, and even shattered part of his internal organs. When he pulled it out, bright red blood flowed out like a stream. But the next second, the flesh and blood at the wound on the abdomen began to wriggle and regenerate, healing at an extremely fast speed. In just a dozen seconds, what would have been a fatal injury to ordinary people disappeared without a trace on Uchiha Zan. And the damage to the internal organs was also repaired, and Uchiha Zan only felt that part of his immortal chakra was consumed. Incredible, Xiao Zan, you actually learned it so quickly. And the eye shadow and facial makeup are so complete, without any flaws. It seems that I really met a genius, so you can now enter the next step of practice. Students absorb natural energy without borrowing little Katsuyu. Katsuyu the Immortal was also amazed at Uchiha Zan's learning ability, and Tsunade had come to practice before. Good guy, she has been sitting here for 3 or 4 days, and she hasn't gotten started. In contrast, Tsunade is so useless that she can't be more useless. Chu. In the room, Tsunade, who was washing wet sheets and clothes, suddenly sneezed. She felt a chill and instinctively felt that someone was scolding her. Unfortunately, she could not think of it. It was the Katsuyu Immortal from the wet bone forest who was talking about her. Time passed quickly, and 5 days had passed. Today, Tsunade was very upset in her room. Since the first time they had love, she had been obsessed with Uchiha Zan for more than a month, and her body had completely changed into his shape. After 5 days of separation, Tsunade felt a little itchy. Did Xiaoshuan succeed? If he failed, he should be back in 3 or 4 days. Tsunade, who missed her very much, was muttering, and with a bang, the clone of Katsuyu Immortal came back with Uchiha Zan. Tsunade, who was wearing pajamas, happened to meet Uchiha Zan, who was topless and had a refreshing face. The muscular body and masculine outline almost made Tsunade drool. After reacting, Tsunade immediately straightened his posture. "Ha, you're back so soon, it seems that you failed, Shao Zan." Tsunade looked at Uchiha Zan with gloating, as if she saw herself who failed at the beginning. She, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru actually went to their respective holy places of summoning beasts to learn Sage Mode. But so far, even Jiraiya has made some progress. As for her and Orochimaru, they are born, useless, and have no fate with Sage Mode. No, Master Tsunade, Master Zan has already learned the full version of Sage Mode. Katsuyu shook her head and told the current situation of Uchiha Zan. Although she could not see any expression on Katsuyu's face, her tone was still particularly pleasantly surprised. From the change in her address to Uchiha Zan, Tsunade could tell that Katsuyu recognized Uchiha Zan. How is it possible? Hey, it's only been 5 days. Even if he learned it, it wouldn't be so fast. Hearing from Katsuyu that Uchiha Zan had learned it, Tsunade blinked and her emotions were a little broken. She had been trying hard for several days before, but there was no effect at all. How come you told me that Uchiha Zan had already learned it in almost the same time? The gap is too big, I will be sad too. Looking at Tsunade who stood up, Uchiha Zan did not respond, but silently clasped his hands together. The natural energy that Tsunade could not perceive immediately gathered into Uchiha Zan's body. A moment later, Uchiha Zan's face showed eye shadow and facial makeup, and the majestic golden eyes made Tsunade completely speechless. Are you kidding? You really learned it? Dao. Tsunade opened her lips slightly, and was completely speechless at the sight in front of her. Katsuyu on the side shook her head. She actually wanted to say, I feel the same way as you. From sensing natural energy, to removing Katsuyu's assistance, to entering Sage Mode on her own. Uchiha Zan's learning speed was frighteningly fast, completely beyond her thousands of years of cognition. They were shocked, and Minchia Zan was actually a little dissatisfied. It will take some time to enter Sage Mode, and it can only last for 15 minutes at most. I am not proficient in this aspect. Chakra strength has increased 5 times, and chakra and physical recovery speed has increased more than 5 times. Unfortunately, the strength of physical regeneration has not reached the regeneration of broken limbs. Uchiha Zan felt that it was still far from his expectations. The only thing that made him happy was that the Sage Mode of the Wetbone Forest would allow users to learn how to use Yang Escape. In this Sage Mode, the wood style he used was no longer a fancy trick. What he had to do later was to get familiar with this feeling, and be able to skillfully use Yang Dun, even without entering Sage Mode, then it would be perfect. There was no need to follow his previous plan to find a way to obtain Hashirama cells or absorb Hashirama chakra. Hearing Uchiha Zan's muttering, Tsunade and Katsuyu broke out in cold sweat on their foreheads. You are talking like a human being, and your amplification is not enough. Even if there is a slight difference between the same level, the gap will be infinitely magnified. And you want to regenerate a broken limb, even Senju Hashirama, my grandfather, does not have such a strong regeneration ability. Master Zan, after all, you have only been learning for a few days, and the duration and intensity will be improved slowly later. Although Uchiha Zan's words were not like human words, the gentle Katsuyu still comforted him. Uchiha Zan nodded slightly, and then looked at Tsunade in front of him. I need a fight to hone my Sage Mode, what do you think, Tsunade? Fight, sure. Hearing that Uchiha Zan was going to fight, Tsunade responded with high morale. Katsuyu saw that he had nothing to do, so he disappeared from the spot. Tsunade was about to ask which training ground to go to for a fight, but Uchiha Zan pushed him to the ground. It's okay, I think this is fine too. You little brat, you actually want to fight like this, how can you be so dirty? Tsunade twisted her plump and charming body, mustering up her strength to resist. She wanted to take over, but she failed in the end. Stop, I just bought this dress. Wait, why are you still in Sage Mode? Are you kidding me? It seems to be an unprecedented determination, and because of the first actual combat. Uchiha Zan successfully raised the duration of Sage Mode to 20 minutes. The effect is also quite significant. At the beginning, if he wanted to overpower Tsunade and make her beg for mercy, it would take at least half an hour. Now, starting from 10 minutes, Tsunade raised her hands and feet and wailed in surrender. Tsunade regained consciousness after half an hour. Staring at the pure white ceiling, she was speechless. She had been gradually gaining the upper hand before, and was enjoying the pleasure of being a female knight. Why did the situation change back now, and even worse? Our compatibility is getting better and better. Tsunade, I feel that I need your help in the future, so that I can hone my Sage Mode for a while longer. Lee Chinhao. Quote. Listening to the voice of Uchiha Zan in her arms, Tsunade Sakura opened her lips slightly and wanted to speak. In the end, she could only turn into 1,000 tender eyes and reluctantly agreed. She really couldn't refuse. Uchiha Zan just touched her lightly, and her body responded instinctively like an obedient slave. What good compatibility. This is clearly forced by you little by little. In the next half-month, Tsunade also lived a life of soaking wolfberries in a thermos. She really couldn't handle it. In the past half-month, she didn't even go to the casino or the tavern once, just resting and recuperating at home. If it weren't for the use of chakra to discharge every time, Tsunade was sure that she couldn't avoid the possibility of pregnancy. At this time point, the ninja world was in the midst of war, and she didn't want to get pregnant now. And she didn't have a boyfriend outside. If she was really pregnant, she would expose Uchiha Zan, and her life would be over. She would definitely be arrested and put in jail. My brother Zan, didn't you say you wanted to learn the Sage Mode of Mount Myoboku and Ryuchi Cave as well? I think you have already mastered the Sage Mode of Wetbone Forest. Tsunade leaned against Uchiha Zan and buried him deep in her arms. While rubbing her shoulders, she used soft clip sounds to ask him to continue learning other Sage Modes. It was really embarrassing to call Uchiha Zan brother, at her age, and I didn't know where he learned this habit. But in order to give herself a few days of respite, Tsunade also went all out without considering her face. Uchiha Zan, who was resting on a soft pillow, was motivated to hear Tsunade's delicate shouts. Okay, it's just right to solve it all at once. After getting the response she wanted, Tsunade was immediately overjoyed and immediately hugged Uchiha Zan tightly in her arms. The next moment, Uchiha Zan was almost squeezed by the soft pillow and lost his vision and breath. Uchiha Zan struggled to get up, like a drowning person crawling out of the field. It has definitely risen to another level. Looking at the trembling and undulating beauty in front of him, Uchiha Zan confirmed this idea. While sighing, Uchiha Zan suddenly remembered something and asked, how is the frontline battle between Konoha and Sand Shinobi? Hearing him ask this, Tsunade put away her smile and thought for a while. It is currently in a stalemate, because Snake also ran to join the battle. Sunagaku's puppetry seems to have become stronger, so we can't win even if we concentrate our firepower. Fortunately, other ninja villages are still watching the battle, and they haven't come down to participate in the battle yet. Tsunade briefly explained the situation of the battle, and she felt that this situation would last for a long time. After all, Sunagaku is not a range shinobi village. Even if the land there is barren, it is still one of the 5 major ninja villages. Moreover, the harsh environment of Sunagaku is also an excellent place to cultivate ninjas. The Sand Shinobi who come out of there are generally stronger than Konoha Shinobi of the same level, except for a few individuals. When mentioning this, Tsunade thought of a special case and mentioned it briefly. Sunagaku's puppet technique has become much stronger recently. It is said that even broken puppets can be reassembled. I don't know where the Sand Shinobi have improved the puppet technique. It is possible that the 3rd generation will have to call us to play again when there are not enough people in the future. Tsunade said indignantly. She knew that Sarutobi Hiruzen was suppressing Uchiha Zan and her reputation. As time went by, the reputation accumulated in the Rain country had been reduced a lot. Now the direction of public opinion is more on the war between Sand Shinobi and Konoha. Although she didn't care much about this little thing, she was still uncomfortable to be secretly calculated like this. When Uchiha Zan heard Tsunade's description of Uchiha, he narrowed his eyes in confusion. Puppets that can be reassembled. In his memory, the puppets controlled by Sunagaku's sand shinobi would not be reassembled after they were broken. This is inconsistent with his memory. I'm afraid there is something hidden. Uchiha Zan finally didn't think about it. After all, it was useless to just think about it. If he didn't go to the front line to check and study it directly, he wouldn't understand it. Then I'll leave first, I'll be back as soon as possible. Tsunade really wanted to say, you don't have to be so quick. Unfortunately, there was no such opportunity. Uchiha Zan took out the summoning scroll he had prepared in advance and teleported away. Zan, you can do Sage Mode, I don't believe I can't do it. Katsuyu, I want to practice too. Tsunade summoned Katsuyu and expressed his thoughts directly. Katsuyu, who had a good personality, did not refuse after looking at Tsunade speechlessly. This time, Uchiha Zan went to the Holy Land, the Ryuchi Cave where the White Snake Immortal was. The Wet Bone Forest, Ryuchi Cave, and Mount Myoboku have different sage modes. Katsuyu Immortal explained to Uchiha Zan that the Wet Bone Forest focuses more on strengthening vitality and the amount and recovery speed of chakra, and it is very difficult to die after learning it. The blue bar is also 9 times or even dozens of times that of others. However, the learning conditions are harsh, and basically only Uzumaki and Senju bloodlines can learn it. The learning conditions of Mount Myoboku are the easiest, and the strength of ninjutsu, illusion BBFC techniques, and physical techniques are comprehensively increased. The learning conditions of Ryuchi Cave can be said to be the most difficult. Its Sage Mode will make the practitioner transform into a dragon. It will change the physical body, or it can be said that the life level is sublimated, which also involves the nature transformation of the yin. Uchiha Zan, who has gradually embarked on the road to mastering Yongdun, decided to learn the Sage Mode of Ryuchi Cave to master Yin Dun Gong. As long as he learns it, he will master the chakra properties of fire, water, wind, thunder, earth, yin, and yang. The most important Yongdun and Yin Dun nature transformation must be learned. Learning these 2 sage modes is the shortcut to this direction. Uchiha Zan, who came to Ryuchi Cave by reverse summoning, instantly appeared in a foggy area. Orochimaru and Katsuyu Sage should have told Yush Sage that I was coming to practice. Uchiha Zan looked around. There were stone pillars and big trees everywhere, and even with strong eyesight, he could not see things 20 meters away. Is it a test for me? Then I'm really underestimated. Uchiha Zan, who quickly understood the White Snake Immortal's idea, smiled. At this moment, 3 pretty figures in kimonos appeared silently on the tree trunk dozens of meters away. They stared at Uchiha Zan in the center of the mist, and whispered with snake cores in their mouths, "It's the person that the White Snake Immortal said he would test, and he's finally here. He looks like a young kid, and his rich vitality is really mouth-watering. Let's see if his will is firm enough, and then we will test him again." The 3 female voices exchanged a few words with each other in charming voices. Then they stood on the tree trunk, admiring the distance, whether Uchiha Zan would give up and go back, or look for him here aimlessly. But their ideas were all wrong, and Chen Ziazan was not going to run around stupidly. Although his eyesight could not observe the surrounding environment, his Kagura Hard-Eye Hardnet's strong perception was not covered up. He clearly captured the 3 beings dozens of meters away. After half a month of running in the Sage Mode of the Wet Bone Forest, he has been able to use Yang Release in a normal state. Combined with the information he got from Tsunade about the wood style and water style that Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobarama knew, he was not going to follow the ideas of the 3 women. Snap! Under the puzzled eyes of the 3 snake princesses, Uchiha Zan suddenly clapped his hands. The next moment, a low roar came from his mouth. Wood style tree world is coming. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Under the confused eyes of the 3 snake princesses, the earth shook in an instant. Tall trees rose from the ground one after another, and a forest appeared out of thin air in a short time. Tanishiroshin. This is Senju Hashirama's wood-style secret technique. Tanzuki. What does he want to do? Aikikishima. I think he's coming towards us. After Aikikishima spoke, the expressions of the remaining 2 snake princesses froze instantly. Because those thick tree roots really flew towards them. The tree trunks they stood on also suddenly rioted and immediately entangled their legs. But due to the excessive number of tree roots and their sudden arrival, their legs and waists were bound and entangled by the tree roots. What's more terrifying is that the tree roots that entangled them madly absorbed their fairy chakra. The three snake princesses fell into a situation where the more they struggled, the more powerless they became. The entangled tree roots supported the three snake princesses and immediately sent them to Uchiha Zan. "Hey, I'm glad to meet you, the three of you who were spying in the dark." Uchiha Zan showed a bright smile and happily looked at the three snake princesses wrapped like dumplings in front of him. They were the senior officials of Ryuchi Cave and were known as the elders and trusted confidants of the White Snake Immortal. Uchiha Zan could feel the extremely powerful chakra contained in their bodies. It's just that they don't seem to know how to use it, and they can't match him in terms of combat power. The three snake princesses also gave up struggling and forced a smile on their faces. "Ah, we are also glad to see you. I think you should put us down first." They sang in unison and faced Uchiha Zan with an extremely friendly attitude. But the three snake princesses were not so kind in their hearts. They were responsible for testing everyone who came to Ryuchi Cave. Even Orochimaru, who came at the beginning, didn't treat them like this. Uchiha Zan naturally agreed. It's not good to embarrass the White Snake Immortal in Ryuchi Cave too much. It was enough to give them a head start like this. Then, the three snake princesses, let me introduce myself. My name is Uchiha Zan. I came here this time hoping to learn the sage mode of Ryuchi Cave. Please give me your guidance. After putting them down, Uchiha Zan took the initiative to speak in a friendly manner. His attitude of using force first and courtesy later really made the three snake princesses feel that they didn't know whether to extinguish it or not. It was just the kind of moment when they were about to explode. This feeling of stopping made them feel like they had eaten a lot but could only swallow it desperately. After the three snake princesses glared at Uchiha Zan fiercely, they immediately showed a sweet smile. The other two snake princesses disappeared into the air, leaving only a beautiful green-haired girl wearing a goddess costume, who remained in place. She wore a golden crown on her head, with a golden ball on the top of the crown, and a tomo-shaped green ornament on her chest. From the inside out, she exuded a noble and dignified temperament, which made people look up to her. The snake girl bowed her head to Uchiha Zan and said softly, "Welcome to Ryuchi Cave." After the etiquette, the snake girl raised her head and introduced herself. "I am Tianxin Shenji. I just wanted to test your perseverance, Master Zan. Now it seems unnecessary. Please follow me." Tianxin Shenji laughed twice and lightly revealed the previous embarrassing incident. Uchiha Zan narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't think snakes were so cunning. Speaking of which, the summoning snake in Ryuchi Cave can actually transform into a human. The sage mode of the human cultivation Ryuchi Cave is transformation into a dragon, while the sage mode of the snake cultivation Ryuchi Cave is transformation into a human. It's a bit like the monster that cultivated into a human in my memory, I don't know. Uchiha Zan subconsciously glanced at it, but it was a pity that Tianxin Shenji's dress was so perfect. That was the extent that the hem of her skirt dragged to the ground and covered her shoes. With the naked eye, even if she walked in front, Uchiha Zan couldn't see the outline of her buttocks. This made him feel itchy and wanted to know what her figure was like. As he thought about it, Uchiha Zan suddenly thought of Shu Xian and White Snake. This grassroots hero was a brave man with a spirit of exploration. Not long after, Tianxin Shenji in front of him stopped, and Uchiha Zan's thoughts were also interrupted. In front of him appeared a magnificent gate with the three words Ryuchi Cave printed on it. Under the guidance of Tianxin Shenji, Uchiha Zan entered the gate. What caught his eyes was the magnificent decoration, and the spacious hall looked like a castle. On both sides of the hall, there were two long tables with plates of delicious dishes on them. Just smelling the aroma of the food made Uchiha Zan's mouth water. The White Snake Immortal is in the temple deep in Ryuchi Cave. I will help you, Master Zan, to arrange it. Please wait for a while. In the meantime, you can rest here and enjoy the food at will. Tianxin Shenji smiled and gently asked Uchiha Zan to rest here first. She went in to call the White Snake Hermit. But in the face of Tianxin Shenji's kindness, Uchiha Zan ignored the food at all, and looked at her speechlessly. Tianxin Shenji, this is what you call a test, it's boring. And is there food for normal people in Ryuchi Cave? It's not an illusion, you created it with fairy magic. Uchiha Zan walked to the long table and took a closer look. Pinching the corner of the table with a little force, the powerful wrist force instantly crushed it. And the crushed corner of the table did not turn into a piece of wood, but gradually turned into gravel and dissipated. Tan Shin Shenji, with a smile on her eyebrows, shook her head helplessly. Tisk, the insight is really terrible, it's obvious that you should just eat the food obediently. While speaking, Tian Shin Shenji's appearance changed, and golden vertical pupils and black-red eyeshadow extending to the wings of the nose appeared on her face. That Sakura peach mouth also grew sharp teeth, and there was a slender blue snake core deep in it. The moment she showed this face, Tian Shin Shenji hadn't finished speaking. Uchiha Zan pinched her cheek with one hand. Don't do that, leave a good impression on me. You look so scary that I really want to strangle you to death. Uchiha Zan said something that made Tian Shin Shenji shudder with a slightly regretful tone. Her appearance that had turned into a snake man suddenly changed back, and she looked at Uchiha Zan in front of her with resentment. The atmosphere was in place, and the long-lost daily shocking activities were interrupted just like that. The man in front of him really didn't play by the rules, and the murderous words in his bones didn't seem to be a lie. Tian Shin Shenji, who was scared, didn't dare to play around anymore. After she surrendered obediently, the previously magnificent palace also disappeared completely. Uchiha Zan and Tian Shin Shenji returned to the regional ministers shrouded by the maze garden before. That Lord Zan, can you please stop grabbing my face? Tian Shin Shenji, whose face was pinched by one hand, spoke faintly. Uchiha Zan was not embarrassed at all, and immediately let go of her hand and asked directly, "What are you doing? Can't you just be serious and let me go?" Looking at Tian Shin Shenji's beautiful appearance, Uchiha Zan's mood suddenly improved a lot. For Uchiha Zan, who is obsessed with face, Tian Shin Shenji didn't know what to say. Fortunately, high-level people like them who are favored by the White Snake Immortal have cultivated Sage Mode to the transformation realm and can completely transform into human form. If they did not transform into human like Shinya, Wan Snake, and Ching Snake, but kept the snake form, who knows what kind of poisonous hand Uchiha Zan would do to them. Although she transformed into a human, Tian Shin Shenji still followed the concept of the survival of the fittest. Feeling Uchiha Zan's domineering and powerful, Tian Shin Shenji, on the contrary, respected his 500 more and more. She nodded respectfully and explained, "This is a test set by the White Snake Immortal. There are 2 more levels that you, Master Zan, need to pass. We cannot violate this." Knowing that she was just a part-time worker, Chenli Zan did not bother her too much. "Okay, where is the next level? I'm in a hurry." Uchiha Zan directly asked Tian Shin Shenji to lead the way, and she also floated in front obediently. Now Uchiha Zan saw her white and tender feet, and at the same time secretly thought in his heart. Ryuchi Cave's Sage Mode has a wide range of expansion directions. Turning mud into objects, flying, changing shapes. Are these considered universal abilities? Uchiha Zan thought of the other 2 snake princesses, who seemed to have shown the ability to be invisible just now. The Wet Bone Forest Sage Mode that he made himself didn't have so many tricks, just pure numerical enhancement. I didn't expect that Tian Shin Shenji would take the initiative to bring him here. Soon after, a crisp lowly voice came from the cave in front. Like a fairy wearing a shawl, dressed exactly like Tianxin Shenji, but with a dark blue long-haired snake princess who looks like a beautiful little Lolita, she floated out of the cave. "Aikikishima Haim, you'll know why I took the initiative later." Tangsen Shenji responded unhappily, and immediately made way. Uchiha Zan looked directly at Aikikishima Haim, his eyes swept over the pair of tender lotus-like calves. The petite figure with delicate calves is a cute Lolita style. And Aikikishima Haim, who met Uchiha Zan's line of sight, laughed like a silver bell. "He, I'm Aikikishima Haim, I'm very interested in you. Can you tell me how you convinced Tianxin Shenji to lead the way for you?" Aikikishima Haim floated in the air, slowly flew to Uchiha Zan, and flew around him curiously. "I'm not interested in telling you this. If you keep floating around in front of me, I'm afraid I'll drag you down." Watching Aikikishima Haim swinging her legs and circling in front of him, Akiya Zan was very upset. Seeing him so boring, Aikikishima Haim pouted like a little girl. In that case, let's get down to business and have some fun with me. As she spoke, Aikikishima Haim disappeared in front of him, and Tanishinjanji motioned Uchiha Zan to enter the cave. Soon, a wall with grooves of different shapes appeared in front of Uchiha Zan. There were many shapes of stones scattered on the ground, and Aikikishima Haim appeared at the right time, smiling and saying, "As long as you fill all the holes on the rocks, I will let you go, and the stones are on the ground." While speaking, Aikikishima Haim also showed Uchiha Zan what a 360-degree rotation in the air is. This silly child's appearance really made Uchiha Zan unable to do it. "Are you sick? Let me play jigsaw puzzles with you. These guys from Ryuchi Cave are all preschoolers. I'm very honest. Go ahead and try before you get exhausted. I don't like overly active chakras. When your chakras are almost gone, I'll enjoy yours." As Aikikishima said this, she wanted to show her snake face to scare Uchiha Zan. But as soon as she made a move, Uchiha Zan grabbed her calf. Aikikishima's face froze, and she looked at Uchiha Zan in front of her in a daze. And Uchiha Zan looked at Tenshinsenji irritably, and said speechlessly, "Do all you snake princesses like to change your face like this and scare people?" As he said this, he swung his hand and used the petite Aikikishima as a windmill. Looking at Aikikishima, who kept screaming, Tenshinsenji broke out in a cold sweat. How should I put it, Master Zan, after all, there are not many ninjas coming to Ryuchi Cave, so we like to have some fun ourselves. Tenshinsenji then laughed awkwardly twice, revealing the boredom of the three snake princesses. Uchiha Zan put her in their shoes and could understand their thoughts. Doing repetitive work every day, and the waiting time may be several years or even decades. If you think about it this way, it is necessary to have some fun at work. The fun that the three snake princesses have, in addition to absorbing the chakra of the losers, is to scare people for fun and see what kind of fearful expressions they will show. Even if you are not scared by them, it is still an interesting side. But it is not the first time that they have seen someone like Uchiha Zan take action directly. At this time, Aikikishima Princess was also shaken. Although they have a high level of sage mode practice, they are not the type who are not good at fighting after all. They have powerful fairy chakras, and they can't fight with Uchiha in front of them. Zan fought back. Aikikishima Haim gradually regained consciousness, shook her head, and there was an indescribable excitement in her expression. She smiled at Uchiha Zan and said, "You are really interesting. No human has dared to do this to us before." Seeing that Aikikishima Haim was actually quite happy, Uchiha Zan saved the trouble of apologizing. Magnet-style iron sand. Facing the jigsaw puzzles on the wall, Uchiha Zan was not going to pick them one by one like a fool. He used magnet style, and the powerful magnetic force instantly attracted the iron sand on the ground. The black iron sand filled the grooves of the wall, and it was all filled in just a few breaths. Tenshinsenji, Aikijima Ji. Looking at Uchiha Zan's operation, the two snake princesses were stunned. They never expected that Uchiha Zan would solve the problem in this way. This cave will absorb chakra quickly, and if you stay here for a long time, you will lose all your chakra. So the test of this game is to solve the problem in the shortest time. Uchiha Zan's method is powerful in many ways. When the cave wall was filled, the scene in front of her also disappeared in a trance. The next moment, a burst of wind came. Uchiha Zan turned her head suddenly, and immediately saw the snake-mouthed Princess Suzu, who opened her mouth to bite her. Magnet-style sand iron binding coffin. Uchiha raised his hand, and the sand iron in the air attacked Tsutsuhime, instantly wrapping and binding her. Tsutsuhime, who was originally preparing for a sneak attack, suddenly lost the ability to resist. Uchiha Zan hooked his finger, and the sand iron grabbed Tsutsuhime and came to him. He looked at the snake princess in front of him seriously. She was dressed exactly like the other two snake princesses. She had long brown hair and a beautiful face like a girl, which was completely different from the other two. She had 3 tomo-shaped green ornaments on her chest, more than the other two snake princesses, which seemed to indicate that her status was also higher. "We meet again. Why are you planning to sneak attack me this time?" Tsutsuhime looked very embarrassed at Uchiha Zan's playful smile. She used the magic to conceal her breath and sneak attack. "How did you find out?" It seems that my test has just begun, but it is about to end. For the first time, the embarrassed Princess Sutsu tried to maintain her few dignity and change the subject. The progress is really fast. You passed the test of Tienshin Shenji and Ikijimaji so quickly. I am Princess Sutsu. There are only a handful of people who can stand in front of me. You are really amazing. Seeing that Princess Sutsu was still praising herself, Chen Miexuan could hardly hold back. Although she acted very calm and composed, her dignified and generous demeanor was also admirable. But no matter how much you show your majesty in my iron sand restraints, you look like you are pretending to be calm. Uchiha Zan held back his laughter and asked bluntly, "Okay, is your test this sneak attack?" As soon as he said this, Princess Sutsu turned her head away awkwardly. She was going to use her magic to inject poison into Uchiha Zan with her fangs and test his will with illusions. But she was killed in return. How could she complete the rest of the work? At this time, Princess Sutsuki felt a wave, and the next moment she knew what she was going to do. You have passed this test, Lord Uchiha Zan. The White Snake Immortal is waiting for you in the temple. Princess Sutsuki lowered her head. She had already sensed the meaning conveyed by the White Snake Immortal to her. If the stalemate continued, she would not be able to do anything to Uchiha Zan. Moreover, Uchiha Zan was recommended by Orochimaru, and later introduced by the immortal Katsuyu, so this test was just a formality. The mist gradually dissipated, and a grand temple appeared in front of Uchiha Zan. This is the real Ryuchi cave, and it is also where the White Snake Immortal lives. The White Snake Immortal is in the temple, please go in. The three snake princesses stood in front of the temple and respectfully led Uchiha Zan in. Uchiha Zan naturally wouldn't be pretentious, and then quickly walked to the front of the temple, pushed open the door and walked in. The space in the temple was also terrifyingly large, but it was empty and gave people a sense of loneliness. In the depths of the hall, Uchiha Zan saw an elderly grandmother lying on the bed, wearing a white gown. This should be the White Snake Immortal, but the snakes in this Ryuchi cave like to pretend to be human. Although he wanted to complain in his heart, Uchiha Zan still expressed respect on the surface. White Snake Immortal, I am Uchiha Zan, and I am here to learn Sage Mode this time. The White Snake Immortal opened his terrifying orange-yellow snake pupils and said with a smile, "Haha, I know, then you have to be prepared. If you fail, I will eat you." "Yes, I'm ready." Uchiha Zan immediately agreed, with an extremely firm expression. The next moment, the White Snake Immortal suddenly stretched his neck, revealing his true form as a white snake. This is a white snake with orange hair and daunting yellow pupils. She has a green cat's eye on her chest, a purple ribbon as a forehead protector, a military green horn-shaped ornament on the forehead protector, and a red knight-shining pearl on her head. The White Snake Immortal opened his mouth directly, revealing his fangs, and bit Uchiha Zan on the shoulder. The toxins mixed with natural energy were injected into Uchiha Zan's body from the White Snake Immortal's fangs. This practice process is completely different from the wet bone forest. Uchiha Zan can feel the injected toxins eroding his body. But within a few seconds, his powerful venom and immunity survived. Each cell full of tenacious vitality greedily absorbed venom and natural energy in turn. Quote exclamation mark question mark quote. The White Snake Immortal, who continuously injected venom and natural energy into Uchiha Zan, naturally sensed his change. Originally, her venom mixed with natural energy gradually transformed the practitioner's body into a snake. If the practice failed, it would completely turn into a snake. Even if the practice succeeded, the practitioner's body would also change due to her venom and natural energy. But the Uchiha Zan in front of him was completely different. The snake scales on his neck only appeared for a moment, and were quickly replaced by human skin. His body actually absorbed his own venom perfectly, and it was not stratified. Feeling the continuous natural energy and venom being injected into his body, Uchiha Zan opened his eyes comfortably. The dark eyes turned into wild golden snake pupils at this moment. Eyeshadow and facial makeup appeared on her face involuntarily, and she instinctively entered the state of Sage Mode. Uchiha Zan could clearly feel that her spirit was getting stronger and stronger, and the cells in her body were also undergoing the sublimation of life level. Instead, the breath of the White Snake Immortal gradually weakened. She never thought that Uchiha Zan could absorb so much. Even if she wanted to stop now, she couldn't stop at all. It was no longer her who was delivering venom and natural energy, but Uchiha Zan's body was forcibly robbing her power. One cell after another began to transform, until all the cells in the body were renewed. The white snake immortal was forced to let go. She was lying weakly on the bed, and at this moment she didn't care about her own state, but looked at Uchiha Zan in front of her in shock. Uchiha Zan, who had been in human form before, had a change in his flesh at this time. His body extended several feet, with golden dragon scales growing out, 2 claws and 4 toes on his abdomen, and a row of dragon thorns on his back, which were extremely sharp and flashing with cold light. The tip of his tail was covered with blade-like scales, and every swing seemed to stir up the wind and clouds and set off huge waves. The head was majestic, and the dragon pupils were like golden beads, and the eyes seemed to be burning with golden flames. The dragon's mouth opened, revealing sharp fangs, and the dragon's whiskers were as delicate as golden silk, floating between the neck. His head did not grow horns, but instead had 2 bulging flesh lumps at the junction of his eyes. Uchiha Zan, who turned into a dragon, only breathed, and the rich life energy exhaled from his mouth caused saplings to grow on the ground in front of him. Looking at the dragon in front of him, the white snake immortal actually felt a dull sense of oppression. Incredible, my body has turned into a dragon posture. Uchiha Zan, in the dragon posture, easily used the water style to construct a mirror and observed his current appearance. Although he looked very much like a golden dragon, there were still many differences in the details. It may be that his strong emotions played a guiding role in his transformation into this appearance. Afterwards, under the catalysis of the wet bone forest and Ryuchi cave sage mode, combined with his own venom and antibody constitution, he perfectly absorbed the venom of the white snake sage and was shaped. After all, if he wanted to become the half-human, half-snake appearance of Yakushi Kabuto, Orochimaru, or the white snake sage in the original work, Chiazan would reject it. He still admired and liked his current majestic dragon posture more. And in the dragon posture, he could withstand the physical strength alone. Cage-level ninjutsu attack. Abilities such as flying, dragon breath, calling the wind and rain can be said to be naturally possessed. The only disadvantage is that he is not used to the current dragon body, and it is not very convenient to use. And looking at the appearance of the white snake immortal's original body, the big white snake, it actually feels quite pleasing to the eye. It is obvious that his beauty seems to have changed a little bit due to the change of his body. If he adapts later, this problem will be solved. Uchiha Zan then thought, and the huge dragon body shrank rapidly. Soon he turned back to human form, but Uchiha Zan, who was still in the dual sage mode superposition of the wet bone forest and Ryuchi cave, only had his pupils changed to golden dragon eyes. In addition, he did not grow horns or scales. Sage art dragon scale technique. Uchiha Zan did not even clap his hands, but a thin layer of golden dragon scales appeared on his body with just a thought. The strength of this layer of dragon scales is only 2/3 of the dragon posture, but it is enough to resist ordinary cage-level ninjutsu attacks. He is immune to ninjutsu and taijutsu below cage level. As for the duration, it is unlimited for him in sage mode. If it is changed to normal, it will consume more chakra. Uchiha Zan, who has not tried it yet, does not know how long he can last. But if he is dealing with a battle, then the time is definitely sufficient. Incredible, kid, I am looking forward to your future. Looking at the power and changes displayed by Uchiha Zan, the eyes of the white snake immortal are very scorching. She saw in Uchiha Zan unparalleled potential and strength, both worthy of her friendship with him. Therefore, her attitude was immediately hundreds of times better than before. Uchiha Zan knew that the white snake immortal was trying to please him, and did not refuse this kindness. After all, he was able to learn the sage mode of Ryuchi cave thanks to the white snake immortal in front of him, and he still had this gratitude. As a mentor, the white snake immortal looks gloomy, but he is really good at teaching. Uchiha Zan also knows where Orochimaru's snake-type ninjutsu came from. It is undeniable that he may have created a lot of it himself, but the source is definitely from Ryuchi cave. Yaki technique, body replacement technique, snake, sage art, white technique, sage art, inorganic reincarnation. This series of ninjutsu and immortal arts, the white snake immortal taught all of them. Among them, Uchiha Zan is most interested in only Yaki technique and sage art reincarnation. Yaki technique is a forbidden technique of Ryuchi cave. The first step is to experience the poison and natural energy injected into the fangs of the white snake immortal, and the body must be able to withstand the alienation before it can be used. The white snake that can transform its own body into 8 heads, 8 tails, has powerful power and a heaven-defying regeneration ability. Unless it is chopped into small pieces of meat that cannot be regenerated, or is sealed, it is difficult to kill or defeat. As a forbidden technique, it naturally has its shortcomings. Not to mention that it is difficult to release. If the caster cannot control the power of the 8 tails, he will lose his mind and become a real beast. And sage art inorganic reincarnation is a reincarnation ninjutsu that can give life to inanimate inorganic matter and control it. Although my dragon posture is not suitable for Yaki technique, it can be improved. The latter, sage art inorganic reincarnation, expands the use of yang escape and can be used to improve one's own yang escape and wood style. The concept of giving life to inorganic matter with yang escape is the wood style in Senju Hashirama's hands. After learning sage art inorganic reincarnation, Uchiha Zan can clearly feel that the strength of his wood style has also increased a lot. This is mainly due to his use of yang escape, which is becoming more and more grandmaster. As for the nature transformation of yin escape, Ryuchi cave also has a deep attainment in this aspect. Previously, Tanishinjinji, Aikikishimaji and others created palaces and caves out of thin air, which was the use of yin to create something out of nothing. But they don't know yang escape, so once the sage art is released, those palaces and caves will disappear. Creating a form from the invisible, and then injecting life into the form, so that it can truly exist for a long time. Quote, Uchiha Zan condensed chakra, first materialized a sapling with yin dun and then injected life into it with yang dun. The next moment, a sapling with strong vitality appeared in front of him. Even though Uchiha Zan released the chakra that maintained it, the created sapling did not disappear. Its tender green leaves swayed left and right, gently touching the palm of Uchiha Zan's hand. The sapling seemed to know that Uchiha Zan in front of it was the creator of it. Quote, Young people are formidable. It has only been 2 months, and you can perform a simple yin-yang dun technique. Quote, looking at Uchiha Zan who created the sapling, the white snake immortal had a tangled expression for a long time, and finally smiled with relief. Although Uchiha Zan's talent exceeded her imagination, the stronger he is, the better it is for her. You are worthy of being Master Zan. It's a pity that we have studied for hundreds of years, but we still haven't mastered the basics of yang dun. Quote, Tanokoshin Heim, Aikikishima Heim, and Suzu Heim, the 3 snake princesses, stood beside Uchiha Zan, looking at the saplings he created with envy. Originally, compared to the previous Uchiha Zan, his attainments in yin dun were unfathomable, which could be said to be their only advantage. But in just 2 months of training, they were completely crushed. From the initial jealousy and envy, they have now turned to worship of the strong. More importantly, the dragon posture displayed by Uchiha Zan is completely in line with their aesthetics. For the 3 snake princesses who have been single in Ryuchi cave until now, it is like a succubus falling into a group of men. Now the 3 of them are looking at Uchiha Zan with shining eyes, and it is not an exaggeration to say that they are salivating. But Uchiha Zan still maintained her reserve. After all, the 3 snake princesses were the white snake immortal's people. The white snake immortal, who looked like an old woman, was gloomy all day long. Who knew what she was thinking when she wanted to be a grassroots hero? Today, Uchiha Zan has learned everything he should learn, and is going to Mount Myoboku to complete the last sage mode. Later, he plans to use the reincarnation portrait of his left eye Mangekyo to integrate and construct a new sage mode. Just from the fact that the sage modes of Ryuchi Cave and Wetbone Forest can be performed at the same time, Uchiha Zan is confident that he can construct it. Then let's stop here. White Snake Immortal, thank you for your teaching during this period. Thank you also for your care during this period, Shenji, Shimaji, and Jinji. I have stayed here long enough, it's time to leave. Uchiha Zan thanked the snake princesses in front of him. Shenji and the others took care of his daily life in Ryuchi Cave for the past 2 months. Otherwise, he might have to sleep in the open, just like in the Wetbone Forest. When the three snake princesses heard that Uchiha Zan was about to leave, their faces were full of regret. Are you leaving? I hope you can come over and sit more often, Master Zan. I am waiting for you here. Why don't you stay and play for a while? I finally found a human who is interested in you. I will be bored again if you leave. Ikea, don't make things difficult for Master Uchiha Zan. He has his own things to do. But Princess Sutsu also hopes that you will come here often in the future. Tangsen Shenji did not try to keep him, but responded tactfully that she hoped he would come over and take a look. Ikihaji, the little girl, spoke without any scruples and spoke directly from her heart. Sutsuji, the oldest, scolded Ikihaji and then showed her kindness to Uchiha Zan in a tactful way. Seeing this, Uchiha Zan did not know how to respond to them for a while. The White Snake Immortal stood up at this time and said with a smile, if you three really want to do that, why don't you let me preside over it and you sign a summoning contract with Uchiha Zan? This way they can also help you normally, what do you think? The White Snake Immortal looked at Uchiha Zan and asked him what he thought. After hearing Uchiha Zan's words, he naturally had no intention of refusing. Anyway, there is no limit to the number of summoning beasts. Signing a summoning contract with these three snake princesses is only good for him and not bad. Tanoko Shinheim, Ikikishimehime and Suzuhime also smiled. Under the auspices of the White Snake Immortal, several people quickly signed a summoning contract. Uchiha Zan did not stay any longer and immediately went to Mount Myoboku using the reverse summoning technique. After he left, the White Snake Immortal looked at the three snake princesses. I know what you are thinking. If you want, go and capture this man's heart. I won't stop you in this regard. The White Snake Immortal naturally knew that the three snake princesses had become closer to Uchiha Zan recently. Or it could be said that this was also her secret promotion, otherwise she would not have let Tien Shin Shenji and others take care of Uchiha Zan. The best way to make the other party become one's own people from ancient times to the present is marriage. If the three snake princesses she trusted the most were to get in touch with Uchiha Zan, that would also completely tie Uchiha Zan to Ryuchi Cave. Old Toad and Old Katsuyu can only teach him Sage Mode. I can directly take people in here. Humph, the advantage is mine. The White Snake Immortal shook his flowing orange hair, his expression was so proud. And it didn't take Uchiha Zan much time to go to Mount Myoboku. Just one day later, he learned the Sage Mode of Mount Myoboku. Mount the top management of Myoboku, Gamafukasaku, who was a trusted confidant of an elder like Tanashi Shinki, almost dropped his jaw in shock. After learning that Uchiha Zan had learned the Sage Mode of Ryuchi Cave and Wetbone Forest, Gamafukasaku was not so shocked. However, Uchiha Zan's practice speed was still far beyond his cognition. It took less than one zone from absorbing natural energy to practicing the complete Mount Myoboku Sage Mode. The eye shadow on Uchiha Zan's face was a constant reminder that he had indeed learned it. When Gamafukasaku doubted his life, Uchiha Zan took the opportunity to yo-yo. Using crystal as a medium, after watching Uchiha Zan leave, Toad Sage, who lived in the temple deep in Mount Myoboku, opened his eyes after a long time. The descendant of the Uchiha clan, since he appeared, my dream has been completely broken. Where to go in the future? Everything depends on fate. Toad Sage muttered to himself. He had predicted the future through dreams. But Uchiha Zan's arrival was not part of the prophecy, and his appearance also changed the subsequent dreams. Toad Sage didn't know whether this was right or wrong, and he was powerless to change it. Now he could only be a bystander, silently watching the development of this world. Uchiha Zan, who returned to Konoha again, wanted to say hello to Tsunade. But when he appeared in Tsunade's bedroom, he didn't see Tsunade. His fingertips brushed the dust on the wooden table, and Uchiha Zan raised his eyebrows slightly. It should have been 2 months since anyone lived here. Did Tsunade go to the battlefield? With a bang, as if to answer Uchiha Zan, a little Katsuyu suddenly appeared in front of him. Master Uchiha Zan, Master Tsunade went to the Wetbone Forest to practice, and she can't come back for the time being. Uchiha Zan was silent for a moment, and then showed a very confused expression. Didn't you say before that Tsunade didn't have the talent to learn Sage Mode? How come she can do it now? Katsuyu, who saw Uchiha Zan's confusion, explained. Tsunade-sama has accumulated a lot of natural energy in her body recently, and a lot of natural energy has transformed her body. This has stimulated her Senju clan's physique, and also qualified her to practice Sage Mode. Now she is progressing quite fast, and is adapting to the state of Sage Mode in the Wetbone Forest. When Katsuyu said this, Uchiha Zan turned his head away awkwardly. He seemed to understand why Tsunade had a lot of natural energy in her body. Isn't this all injected into her by himself? I didn't expect that while strengthening my body with Sage Mode, it would actually have this effect. I must try it on Makoto, Kanako, Kushina and the others later. Uchiha Zan thought secretly in his heart, and when he saw that nothing happened, Katsuyu disappeared on the spot. Uchiha Zan withdrew his thoughts and immediately went back to tell Makoto and the others the good news. Although he had mentioned to them before that he would be away for a while because he was going to practice. But after all, he would be away for 2 months this time, which really worried Makoto and the others. After spending a day comforting each little loli, Uchiha Zan put his thoughts into his body. With the learning of Yin done, the speed of eye power recovery is really fast. These eye powers should be enough to use Turning Spirit Portrait to deduce and construct my own Sage Mode. Uchiha Zan muttered to himself, and then the 8-pointed star Mangekyo in his left eye began to spin rapidly. Merge the 3 Sage Modes of Wetbone Forest, Mount Myoboku, and Ryuchi Cave, and build a unique Sage Mode based on your own physique. As the huge amount of pupil power is constantly consumed, the skills, natural energy ratios, and amplification capabilities of the 3 Sage Modes that Uchiha Zan has learned are all recombined and constructed. This portrayal deduction is not an unknown construction. Uchiha Zan is well aware of the advantages of each Sage Mode. And what he has to do now is to combine the strengths of hundreds of schools, take the essence, and remove the chaff. The eyeshadow mask automatically appears on his face, and a steady stream of natural energy is drawn from the air and integrated into Uchiha Zan's body. This time it is more like robbing than fusion. Uchiha Zan is like the sacred tree planted on the planet by the Otsutsuki clan, plundering the vitality and power of this planet. His chakra is no longer a simple fusion of natural energy to form Shanjutsu chakra. Instead, it absorbs natural energy to become nutrients for chakra in the body. The eyeshadow and facial makeup on his face faded quietly, turning into a dragon tattoo that wandered on his body. The dragon tattoo eventually settled on Uchiha Zan's back, coiling on his spine with a posture of raising his head and swallowing the world. At this time, Uchiha Zan also opened his eyes. The golden eyes were no different from when he entered Sage Mode before, but they were more pure and natural. He clenched his palms and felt the explosive power in his body. It succeeded, but my left eye is almost blind. Uchiha Zan shook his head, and the vision of his left eye was already blurred to the extreme. But he was not worried. He entered the new Sage Mode and was constantly absorbing natural energy and converting it into pupil power to restore consumption. And this exclusive Sage Mode was much stronger than the 3 Sage Modes he had learned before. The first point is that he can enter Sage Mode instantly like Senju Hashirama, or he will never exit it again. The dragon tattoo on his back can help him absorb natural energy into his body continuously. But the efficiency and strength are relatively low, and it is in a half Sage Mode state. The natural energy absorbed by the dragon tattoo will be slowly absorbed by chakra and body. The quality of his chakra will continue to improve until it reaches the level of perfect transformation into Senju chakra. And his body will also be improved by natural energy, and the strength of the body, cell activity, and lifespan will increase. The reason why the White Snake Immortal, Katsuyu Immortal, and Toad Sage can live for so long, in addition to their special species, the most important thing is that they have almost achieved integration with natural energy. If I can continue to absorb natural energy for a long time, I can also live as long as them. At least living for thousands of years is no longer a problem for me. The second point is that this reconstructed exclusive Sage Mode combines the advantages of 3 Sage Modes. It has a comprehensive enhancement on ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, and dojutsu. In this state, it will be much easier to perform yin-yang escape than usual. Moreover, the regeneration ability and chakra recovery speed are definitely much better than the previous Wetbone Forest Sage Mode. However, Uchiha Zan didn't want to go crazy and cut off his limbs to try, so he couldn't judge the strength of his physical regeneration at this moment. It seems that I don't need to eat normally. Just relying on the dragon tattoo on my back to absorb natural energy is enough to provide the daily nutritional consumption required by the body. Uchiha Zan murmured and immediately exited Sage Mode. Now that he has entered this Sage Mode, the initial duration is more than 1 hour. Relying on the dragon tattoo to continuously absorb natural energy, his strength and duration will only get longer and longer. When his body fully adapts to natural energy, or even turns into being able to produce natural energy by itself, then Sage Mode will be his normal state. Uchiha Zan raised his hand at this time, and chakra surged out like a tide, forming a Rasengan in the palm of his hand. The bright blue Rasengan was mixed with a hint of golden luster. The form of chakra, or the internal information, has increased a little. He could see the changes in his own chakra, which made Uchiha Zan think of the Otsutsuki clan. The Otsutsuki clan has an ability called Wedge, which is to copy themselves and digitize themselves, and then insert them into other people's bodies. Similar to a compressed file, it will continue to decompress in the body of another person until the Otsutsuki clan is reborn again. The reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths and their two sons, Ashura and Indra, is essentially a rebirth after chakra records the information of their own genes and souls. But compared to the Otsutsuki clan, the two sons of the Sage of Six Paths are definitely not qualified, and the soul information is not recorded. Uchiha Zan, who was thinking divergently, muttered after thinking about this. Now it is not my chakra, passively recording the information of natural energy, and gradually evolving. The wedge of the Otsutsuki clan is too far away from him, and Uchiha Zan has no reference value. But the closest, Jugo, who is the source of the curse seal created by Orochimaru in the original work, is born with the ability to absorb natural energy. The two ninjutsu that Jugo possesses made Uchiha Zan fall into deep thought. One is re-cell expulsion, which is a technique to distribute cells containing chakra to injured people to heal the wound. The prerequisite for use is that the other person must have the curse seal or must be able to adapt to the power of the curse seal. One is re-cell attraction, which can attract the flesh and cells of other people and change them into your own cells, so that your injured body can recover at a super fast speed. To distribute your own cells to others, you must change the internal genetic structure of your own cells so that they will not be rejected by other people's bodies. And to absorb other people's flesh cells, you must change the other party's cell structure and transform them into your own cells. All of this requires chakra as a medium. Chakra forcibly covers the cells and rewrites their DNA. The plug-and-play Sharingan used in the Fourth War is also based on this feature. It's second. At the same time as the transplant, your own chakra is injected into it, so that its genetic factor information is covered. Thinking of this, Uchiha Zan had a bold idea in his mind. Chakra is essentially energy extracted from the body and mind. Therefore, it actually records the genetic factor information and soul information of his body and mind. So if he uses chakra to record the genetic factor information of others, can he directly obtain the corresponding blood and physique? At this time, Uchiha Zan suddenly reacted. My right eye technique, soul transmigration sacrifice, seems to be a rough use of this ability. I absorbed the chakra and vitality of other ninjas, and then I gained other chakra properties. I absorbed the vitality and chakra of the Uzumaki clan and obtained the Uzumaki sage body. Uchiha Zan didn't expect that after thinking about it, the possibility of derivation had already appeared in himself. Now I am only using it passively. If I can actively use chakra to record this information, then I will. Uchiha Zan whispered excitedly, which reminded him of a creature in his memory. Kaz in JoJo, the ultimate creature with all biological abilities. After thinking for a while, Uchiha Zan also calmed down. At present, these are just his ideas, and there is still a long way to go to realize them. Let's set a small goal first, and try to increase the duration of Sage Mode to 24 hours before World War II. My strength in Sage Mode should be able to enter the Super Cage level. When Uchiha Madara dies by then, my strength will be enough to suppress the existence of the entire ninja world. The only concerns are the Otsutsuki clan that will appear in the future, and the Sage of Six Paths that are hiding somewhere unknown. In any case, the series of plans and ideas that follow can be realized. Uchiha Zan was full of ambition. His desires and ambitions were hidden because of his weak strength before, but now he has to show his fangs little by little. When his heart was surging, Uchiha Zan, who was very angry, did not wait for Tsunade to come back in the next 3 days, but instead waited for Sarutobi Hiruzen's transfer order. He needed to go to the border between the Wind Country and the Fire Country to support the front line there. Looking at the transfer order in his hand, Uchiha Zan frowned slightly and muttered, "Does it feel different from the battle situation in my memory?" Konoha is still in its heyday, and has not lost all its talents under the governance of the third generation and Hanzo. In addition, he had previously cooperated with Tsunade and others in the Rain Country to kill Hanzo of the Salamander. Unlike the original work, a bunch of Konoha shinobi were wiped out. Logically, this wave of ninjas went to another front. Even if Chiyo of the Wind Country used poison, Konoha still had the upper hand in the battle. But looking at the emergency status of this transfer order, Uchiha Zan could see that Konoha seemed to be in decline. "You have been training in Ryuchi Cave these days. What happened?" "I was busy comforting Makoto and the others before, and I didn't have time to ask what happened recently." Uchiha Zan threw the transfer order away and immediately found Makoto and Kushina and the others. The two of them came to accompany Grandma Uzumaki Mito today. Tsunade has been training in the Wetbone Forest recently, so Mito is alone. "You are here, Shaoshuan." Uzumaki Mito, who was sitting in a rocking chair, smiled kindly when she saw Uchiha Zan coming. Uchiha Zan not only went to the Whirlpool Country to save her people, but also saved her grandson Nawaki, who was fooled and imprisoned to death before. Therefore, Uzumaki Mito likes Uchiha Zan very much, and is also behind him to let Uzumaki Kushina contact. Otherwise, with his identity as a member of the Uchiha clan, he would definitely not be able to contact the future Nine-Tails Jinchuriki Kushina too much. "Long time no see, Grandma Mito." Uchiha Zan also greeted her in a friendly manner, and then looked at Makoto and Kushina, who were sitting next to Uzumaki Mito. He did not deliberately beat around the bush, but asked directly what happened on the front line recently. Hearing that Uchiha Zan was going to the front, Kushina's expression suddenly shrugged. Uchiha Zan had been training recently, so she hadn't seen him much. If he went to the front again, wouldn't she not be able to see him again? Although she was a little depressed, Kushina still told what she knew. Sunagaku's puppetry must have been top-notch with some special method. Originally, their number of ninjas was less than ours, but with the endless puppet army and Chiyo's poison, we heard that we have begun to collapse. The two gestured with their hands, but they couldn't explain it. After all, they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they just knew the information in this regard. "It seems that the third generation is going to let you go over there for support. Try to be careful, Xiao-zan." Uzumaki Mito didn't have much else to say, so he could only give Chia-zan a piece of advice. Uchiha-zan nodded slightly, then remembered something, and reached out to touch Kushina, BBDF, and Uzumaki Mito and Makoto. His chakra turned into a dragon tattoo of several centimeters, crawling along his palm to their bodies. "This is a little gadget I made when I studied Sage Mode. It's a fairy curse seal that can enhance the recovery speed of your chakra and body." Uchiha Zan explained, but there was one thing he didn't say. The person who possesses this fairy curse seal can sense the existence of the other person even if they are far away. It can even be said that this is actually a restraint, and it can also control the marked person at a critical moment. The Sage Curse Seal also has the ability to prolong life, and Uchiha Zan still hopes that Uzumaki Mito can live longer. Whether it is out of concern for the elders or out of consideration for his own interests. As long as Uzumaki Mito is not dead, she can be regarded as a talisman for him. With her in charge, he can save a lot of trouble in Konoha. Otherwise, he has to deal with everyone by himself, and it is difficult for him not to transform into the Great Western King and kill anyone who blocks or opposes him. The eyes of the three people widened a lot, feeling the power given to them by the dragon tattoo. Uzumaki Mito can clearly feel that her old body is much more comfortable. A lot of vitality has been added out of thin air, nourishing her body. She looked at Uchiha Zan with a kinder look, knowing that this was his intention. "Makoto, let's go. I need to organize a team to go to the front. Teacher Tsunade can't come back for the time being, so we have to set off first." Uchiha Zan is not going to go alone. From Kushina's mouth, it can be heard that Konoha may have to mobilize more ninjas to the front this time. Since Makoto and the others may have to go later, it is better to follow me so that it is safer. Well, then Mito, Kushina, goodbye. Makoto immediately stood up, said goodbye to the two, and followed Uchiha Zan's steps. Kushina looked at the two eagerly. As a reserve Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, she didn't have so much freedom. I want to go too. Kushina waved her little pink fist, her expression was very unwilling. Looking at Kushina's appearance, how could Uzumaki Mito not know what she was thinking? If you want to catch up with Shaozan, then practice hard. When you, Kushina, are able to inherit my legacy, you will also have the opportunity to dominate your own destiny. Touching Kushina's head, Uzumaki Mito whispered to comfort her. Kushina seemed to be encouraged and immediately went to the inner room to start refining chakra. With the help of the Sage Curse Seal, her refining speed was several times faster than usual. Uchiha Zan, who returned to the Uchiha station, immediately found Kanako and Konan at home. They have been quite leisurely recently, just cleaning the room and watching TV. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.